"Arya, my angel, sing for me." Who could have known that a siren, blessed with a voice of heaven, would have her wings clipped, reduced to a lowly, abused songstress? Day and night, she sang for men, even as her vocal cords tore and blood painted her lips. The sorrow woven into Arya's song only earned her a brutal beating and a blade poised to end her life. Despair clawed at Arya. A silent prayer escaped her lips. "Anyone, please, save me." Just then, a stern-faced man approached. Without hesitation, he slew the Emperor and opened Arya's cage. His first words were a command for her to leave. But Arya, yearning for freedom, had forgotten her broken legs. She couldn't go anywhere. The man, with a single glance, gently lifted her from the cage, not to hear her sing. He didn't even seem to mind the risk of being driven mad by her siren song. Arya knew him. He was the Grand Duke, the demon, the one who, at 18, had offered his soul for power and murdered his own family to obtain it. Silent tears streamed down Arya's face. He was the demon who had cast her into hell and the light that had offered her salvation. If there's a next life, she thought, I want to save this gentle, yet broken man. A sudden growl jolted her awake. Was it a dream? The dark-haired young man before her seemed so fierce. Today was the day of their sham marriage. It was for her sake and his protection. He'd rather argue with the maids than share a room with her. Locked in her room, he paced restlessly. Excitement surged through Arya. Had she returned to 10 years ago? She grasped his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming into this world. I will make you happy." Her mad mother had forced her to drink silencing potions since childhood. Unable to speak, she'd endured her father's constant abuse. Arya never understood what she had done wrong. Every refusal to drink the potion brought terrifying repercussions. Then, when Arya was 10, her mother, unable to bear the humiliation any longer, ended her life with a dagger. Only then did Arya learn the truth. Her mother was a siren, captured by the Earl, a creature of legend, said to control all with her song. Because she hadn't taken the potion, Arya's pained cries, during another beating, were a haunting melody. Disbelief, then madness, flickered in her father's eyes. From that day forward, Arya replaced her mother, singing for the royal family. The endless singing brought her endless pain. She prayed to the heavens, but received no answer. Instead, her extraordinary gift led people to worship her as a deity. Over time, whispers spread. Sirens were enchanting demons. Their songs could drive men mad. With the saintest, tearful accusations, the people turned against Arya, demanding the death of the heretics. War erupted. Everyone, regardless of age or gender, was forced to fight. Refusal meant death as a heretic. Even as chaos reigned, the Emperor still demanded Arya's song. He broke her legs and imprisoned her in a cage. In the endless darkness, as Arya awaited death, she met her demon. "Shall I kill them for you, Grand Duke?" The hatred in Arya's eyes prompted the demonic offer. Utterly broken, Arya yearned for release. Yet, in the face of death, she still called out to the demon. The Grand Duke scooped her into his arms, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. The siren, who could have ascended to heaven, chose to remain in hell. Indifferent to her fate, Arya wanted to sing one last song for him. Though no sound escaped her throat, the Grand Duke listened intently. He was the demon who had cast her into hell, and the light that had offered her salvation. As Arya's breath left her, the scent of flowers filled the air. Arya's eyes fluttered open. She was back in the attic, her prison. But there was no pain, no cold cage. This wasn't a dream. The blossoms outside seemed to herald her rebirth, and she could speak. This was the turning point. If this was a second chance, then let them prepare for her vengeance. Arya, tortured to death, was reborn. She had returned to the day her tragedy began. Leaving her room, she ignored the maid's spiteful insults. She would find the one who had ruined her life. As the door swung open, she saw her father, drowning in drink. Before he could react, she unleashed her siren song. The mesmerizing notes transported him to a sun-drenched paradise. The Earl stared at the worthless girl in disbelief. She wasn't just a siren. She was more powerful than her mother. To possess her would be to control the empire. Consumed by this delusion, he demanded more. But she refused, mocking him, saying he was unworthy to hear her voice. Ignoring his bluster, she continued to weave her spell. She would erase his memory, trap him in a dream, and bend him to her will. As the last note faded, the Earl convulsed in agony, then became a puppet devoid of will. Arya demanded the mermaid's tears and the key to his hidden chamber. After a thorough search, She found the two teardrop-shaped jewels tucked away in a corner. The Earl had always worn them. He'd only removed them after her mother's death. They negated a siren's control, a secret he'd only learned in his final moments. Stepping out of the room, Arya finally accepted that this was real. She'd expected hell, but she'd been reborn 10 years into the past. The burn scars were gone from her face. Her legs were whole. If death still awaited her at 20, what could she do to change her fate? She looked at the silencing potion on the table. She knew the power and the danger of her voice. No one could discover her true nature. She remembered the Grand Duke, the man immune to her song. His faded eyes only sparked with life during moments of violence. 4 years from now, on the day he inherited his title, his entire family would be slaughtered. He, the sole survivor, would be suspected. Though ultimately cleared, the shadow of doubt would linger. He was a hollow shell. Arya's curiosity burned. She didn't want him to rise to heaven, nor fall to hell. She wanted him to experience simple happiness. If he would let her, she would give him everything, live only for him. Meanwhile, a dark-haired young man stared out at the starlit sky. Suddenly, a servant rushed in, panic lacing his voice. "My lord," he stammered, "your mother, the lady is fading fast." The maids, openly gossiping in front of Arya, speculated that the Earl must be drunk to acknowledge this worthless girl. They suspected he was simply taken by her beauty, wanting to keep her as a pet. After all, sirens were legendary for their allure. A myth, they'd thought, until they saw Arya. Those who remembered her mother couldn't deny the resemblance. Even without fine clothes, Arya, sitting quietly, was a captivating portrait. Yet, their cruelty remained unchanged. Suddenly, a maid rushed in with news. The Earl had not only purchased lavish gowns, but planned to send Arya to Belenta. The maids, Linny among them, feigned shock, their faces alight with malicious glee. They whispered that Arya was doomed. Becoming a bride of Belenta, they said, meant severing all ties with family. And every bride, they claimed, died after giving birth. No one knew if it was true, but the rumors were chilling. The maids who had tormented her, now fearing retribution after the Earl's announcement, openly wished her dead. Arya heard every word. She considered punishing them as she had her father. But then, she reconsidered. She had other plans. Taking pen and paper, she scribbled a list of demands for food, only to be met with sneers and rebukes. Enraged, she kicked over a water basin. "Bring it," she warned, and quickly. Soon, she sat before a table laden with food. "Don't disturb me," she commanded. Looking at the faces of those who had wronged her, she decided on a different punishment. They would live in fear. Their bewildered terror reminded her of the nobles who had seen the face beneath her mask. That memory stung. Perhaps it was best to keep her face hidden. Isolated and reclusive, Belenta rarely interacted with the outside world. The carriage carrying Arya and the Earl, despite following the supposed route, seemed to circle endlessly. The Earl pounded on the carriage walls in frustration. He forced the driver to stop. Belenta's arrogance infuriated him. Even his letters had gone unanswered. The driver suggested they turn back. No one knew the true path to Belenta. No one who ventured and ever returned. The Earl roared, threatening the driver with his sword. He would complete this task, even if it meant death. "Do as I say, or die now," he screamed. Arya, about to intervene, felt a surge of power. Looking at her tingling fingers, she recognized a barrier, a ward. In this world, woven with unseen energies, all power was connected. With enough sensitivity, one could sense the flow. Despite the barrier, Arya pressed on. Suddenly, the air shifted and panic erupted. Arguments broke out. Even inside the carriage, Arya felt a prickle of unease. The distant howls of wolves sent a wave of apprehension through her. She retrieved her mask, ready to investigate. But the scene that greeted her, blood and carnage, clearly pointed to the man standing before her. His disdainful words tightened the knot in her stomach. His faded gray eyes confirmed it. He was from Belenta. As a monstrous hound lunged, Arya froze, paralyzed with terror. Was this how her second life would end? But then, the ferocious beast grew docile, nuzzling its head against her, licking her face. What in the... The man, irritated, thought the hounds had gone mad. They were fawning over this girl. He couldn't help himself. He gave one a sharp rap on the head. The offended hounds promptly retreated to Arya, whimpering and seeking comfort. The man fumed. These were ferocious beasts, bred for power, yet they were submitting to a weakling? and she wore that strange mask. Was she even stronger than he was? The thought was absurd. He didn't understand the innate connection between sirens and animals. Arya stroked the soft fur of the hounds, marveling at their affection. "They're so adorable," she murmured. The man, intrigued, scooped Arya up. He would take this little oddity home. Inside the Belenta manor, Arya was greeted by the steward with a warm welcome and a cup of hot cocoa. Having never seen such a thing, Arya poked curiously at the white object floating on top. It was surprisingly soft. The steward explained it was a marshmallow, but Arya misheard him as melon candy. The drink, however, tasted nothing like melon. The man, overhearing her mumbling, decided to feed the intruders who had dared trespass on Belenta grounds to the hounds. The Earl protested. Those were his highly paid guards. He glared at the man, only to be met with a menacing snarl from one of the hounds. The Earl's foolishness prompted the steward to remind him how lucky he was to be alive. The Earl, misunderstanding, assumed he was being offered compensation. "Name your price," he boomed. "I'll pay anything." He then stated his purpose for coming, subtly gesturing for Arya to remove her mask. Receiving no response, he coughed and began praising his daughter's beauty. "She's mute," he explained, "so no risk of her revealing secrets. Her only flaw is she's too clever, learns everything quickly." He kept glancing nervously at the man. The steward, losing patience, interrupted. He accused the Earl of insulting Belenta's young master. He ignored the Earl's blustering and stated that any tolerance shown was solely due to respect for the Earl's father. Arya, well aware of her father's dealings, now understood the veiled threat. Belenta's master was a viper. Yet, at that moment, the steward expressed concern for Arya, noting that her mask must make it difficult to drink the cocoa. Arya, surprised by his kindness, heard a bark and the steward's murmur. Did he, like the hounds, sense she was a siren? If so, she would use it to her advantage. She would ask them to let her stay. But then, the Earl, impatient, snatched the note from her hand. His rudeness infuriated the adoring hounds. The Earl's crude behavior not only angered the dogs, but also earned him a sharp backhand from their master. He removed his hat. "The girl," he declared, "is mine." He was the Lord of Belenta. Arya studied him, struck by their resemblance. Except for the longer hair, she thought. Noticing her stare, the Grand Duke threatened to throw this strange little thing to the dogs. Arya, however, clung to his coat, nodding vigorously. After a moment of thought, the Grand Duke instructed the steward to prepare the paperwork and payment. The steward beamed, reasoning that anyone who could control animals couldn't be bad. Arya, overhearing, was skeptical. Arya, remembering the man's earlier suggestion of feeding her to the hounds, watched with a flicker of amusement as servants brought in several chests overflowing with gold coins. The Grand Duke intended this as payment for Arya claiming ownership of her. He warned the Earl that any breach of contract would result in the utter annihilation of his family. The Earl, ever grasping, pushed further. He requested custody of any daughters born from a union. Arya, well aware of her father's obsession with sirens, expected the Grand Duke to agree. Instead, the Grand Duke's expression hardened. The Earl was to forget he ever had a daughter. Completely. Not wanting to frighten Arya, the steward suggested the Earl step into the next room. A casual gesture summoned 2 knights who escorted the protesting Earl away. The Earl's cries echoed through the manor. The steward, intrigued by Arya's apparent calmness, refrained from comment. He led her towards a room, suggesting she rest. Arya, curious, followed. The steward ushered her into a simple guest room. To Arya, accustomed to the attic, it felt as luxurious as a princess's castle. Furthermore, the steward had arranged for the young master's own nursemaid to attend her. The woman's effusive praise made Arya blush. The nursemaid then explained the young master's absence. Arya understood. Who would welcome an uninvited fiancé? Sensing Arya's dejection, the nursemaid offered to prepare her some food. Arya, used to cold, stale scraps, hesitated. After a moment, she wrote, "A bowl of warm soup." The nursemaid looked perplexed. Arya added, "Hot cocoa with melon candy." The nursemaid's confusion deepened, while the steward, observing, chuckled. Perhaps she hadn't explained herself clearly. Arya wrote the soft, white thing. The nursemaid's face brightened in understanding. "Of course, dear. I'll bring it right away." Arya, realizing her ignorance, confessed she didn't know the names of many foods. Fearful of disappointing them, she added that she was eager to learn. As the note fluttered to the floor, the nursemaid enveloped Arya in a warm hug. Arya, accustomed to disdain, was astonished to feel the woman's tears against her cheek. "It will be all right, dear one," the nursemaid murmured. "You've done nothing wrong." The comforting warmth lulled Arya to sleep. She awoke to the sound of rain drumming against the window pane. The head maid, entering, saw Arya's pensive expression. "Did you have a bad dream, dear?" She fretted, worried she had frightened Arya the previous night. Arya quickly grabbed her notepad, scribbling, "I'm not a child." The head maid chuckled. She gently stroked Arya's hair. Arya, mimicking the gesture, touched her own head, as if trying to retain the warmth of the touch. Her gaze, fixed on the maid, silently pleaded for another caress. Intrigued, the maid asked what Arya had been looking at, learning of her fascination with flowers, and hearing that the city boasted many rare blooms. The maid, unable to resist Arya's hopeful expression, promised to take her out. Gesturing toward a trunk overflowing with pretty dresses, she asked which one Arya usually wore. Arya explained she had never worn any of them. They were all new. The maid's face darkened. She would throw these rags away. Her anger growing, she clapped her hands, announcing that a proper gown would be made. Immediately, Arya, cooperating with the flurry of activity, watched in disbelief as she was transformed. Clad in a magnificent gown with a hooded cloak and glossy rain boots on her feet, she looked like a princess in disguise. The room fell silent, everyone captivated by her sudden elegance. Holding a small parasol, Arya's face was a mixture of bewilderment and wonder. They had actually done it. Not only that, but they had also thoughtfully sewn a rabbit mask for her, hoping its presence would help her sleep soundly. Despite her insistence that she wasn't a child, no one asked her to remove the mask, not even the Grand Duke. Perhaps they were testing her. After all, the quickest way to understand someone is to treat them well. She had intended to remain composed, but the moment she donned the rabbit mask and felt a gentle nudge, her facade crumbled. Then, a cup of hot cocoa appeared before her, and Arya abandoned all pretense. The soft, fluffy marshmallows sent her spirits soaring. Watching the girl's contented expression, the Grand Duke couldn't help but express his fondness repeatedly. This unfamiliar affection made Arya flustered. She wanted to say something, but a sudden knock interrupted the moment. A maid burst in, frantic, announcing an emergency. Arya, reborn and returned, faced not only the man's doubts, but was also forced to speak against her conscience. She looked up at the top floor, where the Grand Duchess resided. Moments before, the maid had rushed in with news of the Grand Duchess's sudden worsening condition. As head maid, she had to attend to her immediately. Before leaving, she reminded Arya to return promptly after viewing the flowers. Now, Arya was alone, wandering the grounds. He should be at his mother's bedside, shouldn't he? Lloyd, who deeply loved his mother, had been tormented by the inability to accept her death in his previous life. To avoid repeating that tragedy, he needed to save her. But as an outsider, Arya had no way to enter the Grand Duchess's chambers. Lost in thought, Arya didn't notice someone approaching. She startled as a sharp blade pressed against her throat. "Who are you? What are you sneaking around here for?" Faced with the sudden interrogation, Arya, unable to speak, was pressed further as the man demanded her purpose. The man's vibrant expression was a stark contrast to the vacant gaze she remembered from her past life. It seemed he wasn't always mad. Losing patience, Lloyd threatened to roll her head in the mud until her skin was flayed. The vivid imagery brought a flicker of composure back to Arya. Confirming the girl's inability to speak, Lloyd finally sheathed his sword. It was then that Arya understood. He was testing her, probing for deception. His sharp intuition made it difficult for her to prove herself. Watching the girl cower, Lloyd gave her the nickname Little Rabbit. He then revealed he could read lips. If she wanted to express her true feelings, she could mouth the words. "My true feelings. To break free from my cage and meet you. To be your spark. To illuminate you. To help you become a brilliant, dazzling star. Even if it cost me my life, I have no regrets." But these words she couldn't utter. It was merely an expression of affection for another. Amused, Lloyd noticed the intensifying rain. He took the girl's hand, leading her to shelter. Along the way, he commented on her thin frame, noticing a trickle of blood on her neck. He produced a silk scarf and, turning her around, gently bandaged the wound. He even tied it with a delicate bow. Despite this kindness, his distrust lingered. He asked her if she was water rat fodder. Confused, Arya mouthed, "What's that?" learning that the water rat was the leader of a hostile faction in Belinta's sewers, and the fodder were his loyal underlings, whose tongues were cut out. Lloyd, to verify Arya's identity as the Earl's daughter, who had mysteriously never been seen, asked her to repeat after him, "Lloyd is so handsome." "Go on." "It's like that night. The blind man asked the mute girl to say I love you. And the mute girl asked the blind man, 'Am I beautiful?'" Insulted, the blind man was about to lash out, but the mute girl stopped him. She just moved her lips, saying, "Baby, what are you even thinking about?" Lloyd, after a moment of thought, impatiently told her to leave. Belinta wasn't suited for weaklings like her. If she wanted to survive, she should get out. Back in her room, Arya overheard the maids whispering about the Grand Duchess's condition. They said she had even given her last wishes. The Grand Duchess, who loved cherry blossoms, had longed for spring, but had rained incessantly. Whenever the Grand Duchess's health worsened, the young master would always hide himself away in grief. Only after the two maids had murmured their way out of earshot did Arya dare to peek out. The cherry blossom tree they spoke of, could it be the withered tree in the courtyard? Remembering the head, maid's promise, Arya returned to the courtyard and gazed at the bare branches. She decided to try using her song of life to revive it, though usually afraid to speak, lest she reveal her siren identity. Now she sang freely. The siren's enchanting voice quickly gathered a powerful force. The withered branches, stirred by the song, gradually awakened. The girl, singing with all her heart, seemed like an emissary of nature, nourished by the life force. The reborn tree burst into a cascade of blossoms. While marveling at the beautiful cherry blossoms, Arya let out a muffled groan as her body felt the strain. Just then, a cooing sound caught her attention. Arya reached out and summoned a carrier pigeon, hoping to enlist its help. She whispered a few instructions and watched as the pigeon flew away. Weakened, she stumbled, then collapsed, losing consciousness. Meanwhile, the pigeon, persistently pecking at the window, not only startled the maids, but also woke the Grand Duchess. The maids hurriedly explained that the pigeon outside had gone mad and wouldn't go away. Intrigued, the Grand Duchess, despite her frailty, asked the maids to help her to the window. As she reached the window, she gasped at the sight before her. A profusion of blossoms, bathed in sunlight, exuded a captivating fragrance. This vibrant melody of life, was this the miracle everyone spoke of? Lloyd, touched, carried her back to her room and even gifted her a gleaming pen, only to leave her a note telling her to get out. On his way to visit his mother, he heard a commotion. The maids informed him that the girl had disappeared. Recalling his harsh words, he thought that rabbit must have been scared and hidden herself. As he prepared to search for her, the maids pleaded with him to be gentler with the girl. This only infuriated Lloyd, who grumbled as he began his search. Upon entering the courtyard, he was stunned. The withered cherry blossom tree had miraculously burst into a sea of blossoms. The unreal sight made him pinch himself, but the pain in his cheek confirmed it wasn't a dream. Mother will be so happy to see this. Suddenly, something beneath his foot caught his attention. He looked down at the little rabbit's bag. Suspecting it held hidden weapons, he opened it, only to find cheap scraps of paper. He figured she used them to communicate. One read, "Hot cocoa with honeydew sugar. So fluffy. She means marshmallows, doesn't she? What an idiot. She doesn't even know what those are." However, as Lloyd continued to read through the notes, his expression grew serious. What has she been through? Why is she begging for forgiveness after being called an idiot? Who's been bullying her? Holding the last piece of paper with writing on it, he felt a pang of sympathy. Though curious about the girl's appearance, he withdrew his hand. After he left, Arya, still groggy, awoke to find herself surrounded by people. Startled, she wondered, have they been here taking care of me this whole time? Donna gently felt her forehead, asking if she felt any discomfort. Arya's sweet and obedient demeanor immediately captivated the maids. Suddenly remembering something, Arya sat up and grabbed Donna's hand. She carefully wrote, asking about the Grand Duchess's condition. Learning that the Grand Duchess was out of danger and that Lloyd had visited and had even retrieved her bag, Arya wanted to express her gratitude. She found a beautiful 24K gold pen inside. Worried Arya might refuse it, Donna explained that the young master had found it and wanted her to have it. Marveling at Belinta's wealth, she then noticed a crumpled piece of paper. It read, "Get out as soon as you're well." How much does that guy hate me, she thought. Donna smiled, not answering directly. Instead, she brought a cup of hot cocoa with honeydew sugar, explaining that the young master had specifically requested it for her. However, to Arya, it felt like he was telling her to gather her strength and get as far away as possible. Her tragic past made her afraid to express any emotion, even to the point where she struggled to eat. Worried she would go hungry, the maids gave her a jar of candies to keep with her. Having never seen anything like them, she wondered if these star-like jewels were edible. She tentatively put one in her mouth. The sweet taste exploded on her tongue. Her expression of pure delight brought joy to everyone watching. Knowing she loved plants and mindful of her delicate health, they brought her beautiful flowers. Excitedly, they introduced them to her. "This is a red rose. That's a violet," as Arya reveled in the sea of blossoms. 2 knights entered the room. They were assigned as her temporary bodyguards. One of them, however, looked incredibly reluctant, as if forced into the duty. Just then, Arya suddenly sneezed, startling everyone. She rubbed her nose. Confused by their panicked reaction, the red-haired knight nervously pulled out a childcare manual. It clearly stated that pollen could cause allergic reactions. Worried about the frail and helpless girl, Donna angrily pointed and exclaimed, "Quickly, quickly, get all of this out of here." Before Arya could react, every single petal was gone. Not only that, but Donna continued to berate herself for her oversight. Arya tugged on her sleeve, asking what beyond the border meant. From Donna, she learned that the border referred to the mountains surrounding Belenta. To tame the ferocious beasts. Children born in Belenta are naturally strong. But even so, they can't compare to the Grand Duke's lineage. Is that why Lloyd said I don't belong here? She wondered. Just then, a maid arrived, pushing a cart laden with food prepared for Arya. Donna, however, intercepted it. She worried the ginger soup might upset Arya's stomach, and the egg custard too, fearing a potential risk of infection. In her eyes, Arya was like a newborn baby, requiring the utmost care. Arya knew she wasn't a child, but their attentiveness filled her with a warmth she had never known. At that moment, an unfamiliar voice reached her ears. The speaker not only criticized her frail appearance, but also mocked her as unworthy of Belenta's young master. Arya, with her siren hearing, caught every word despite the hushed tone. In response to the insults, Arya gestured for the man to approach. Though outwardly obedient, his words remained sharp. "What are your orders, miss? If you can't speak, write them down." His disdain and provocation were clear. How would Arya respond? He could have been the head of security, but he chose to assert his power by belittling her. He even sneered, calling her an unwanted beggar. Unfazed, Arya asked his age. 24. "So what?" he retorted. Arya feigned surprise. "So old and still just talking big? It's okay if your body is weak, but it's a shame if your brain is too." Her unexpected sarcasm infuriated him. "And you? What about this pitiful act you're putting on?" Arya remained calm, writing, "I won't become someone like you." Enraged, the knight yelled, "You brat, say that again." A cold voice cut through the air. "Who are you calling a brat?" He was about to retaliate when he saw the rabbit frantically shaking her head. She didn't even seem to care that her wound had reopened. Though annoyed, Lloyd wasn't about to let the knight off the hook. He ordered him to continue their previous conversation. "If you can't explain yourself, I'll let my pet play with you." The terrified knight apologized to Lloyd, only to be met with further disdain. "Are you blind?" Lloyd scoffed. Before he could finish, the knight dropped to his knees before Arya. "I'm so sorry, miss." Arya noted his cowardly nature as she heard Lloyd's disapproval. "Are you stupid? Why would you let him insult you like that?" Arya's face crumpled. Worried she would be bullied again, Lloyd handed her a knuckle duster. "While I'm gone," he said, "you have my full authority, including how you deal with him." He then instructed the knight to leave Belenta and find new lodgings before his return. Arya didn't understand why it had to be so complicated. Half asleep, Arya heard something tapping against the glass. She stumbled towards the bothersome sound and found the white dove that had delivered the letter earlier. Something was tied to its leg. Curious, she played with the dove for a moment before removing the note. She had been prepared for death, but now felt a glimmer of hope. No matter what, she would fight to live. Though this was what she desired, the thought of her siren identity being exposed and the terrible consequences it could bring. Torn, Arya eventually picked up a pen and paper, composing a reply. She instructed the dove to tell the Grand Duchess. Whether it's the scorching heat of summer, the abundance of autumn, or the pure white of winter, I will strive to prolong them for you." The letter in her hand made her uneasy. Arya knew a siren's song of life could save the Grand Duchess, but her fragile body couldn't yet withstand the impact of the song. After much deliberation, she decided to find a suitable place to practice singing. Just as she was looking around, Donna grabbed her hand. "Miss, your body hasn't fully recovered. You can't just run around. I won't be swayed by your cuteness." Arya blinked her large, innocent eyes on the verge of tears. Donna's resolve crumbled. All right, but, miss, you must return quickly." Before Arya left, Donna reminded her not to worry about getting lost, as everyone would be happy to help her. And so, she wandered through the vast ducal estate, finally finding a place to her liking. Suddenly, she was assaulted by an unidentified object, panting and breathing hot air on her. It was the hound she had seen the other day. Arya looked around, but saw no one else. Curious why the dog was there, she learned it had followed her scent, looking for affection. To test their compatibility, Arya commanded it to lie down and even roll over. The dog obeyed each command. She thought, I must be a natural beast tamer. This explained why her father kept animals away from her. After a moment of thought, Arya decided to ride the hound. Perhaps the dog could help her. After a short ride, instead of a secluded spot, the dog led her directly to the Grand Duke. Arya plastered a polite smile on her face, while inwardly wanting to pull out every hair on the dog's body. The Grand Duke picked her up as if she were a kitten, fussing over the dog while shaking her, warning her to be gentle with his beloved pet. After venting his displeasure, the Grand Duke asked what she wanted. Confused, Arya fumbled for her pen and paper, unsure how to address him. Your Highness felt too formal, Grandpa too strange. She settled on, Uncle, I wanted to see you, so I came. The words on the paper nearly turned Lloyd's green hair red. What has this poor child been through, he thought, to seek out the living embodiment of death? Under Lloyd's scrutinizing gaze, Arya expressed her happiness at seeing him again. The Grand Duke, bewildered, couldn't understand what she was doing, but her boldness piqued his interest. The Grand Duke's slight upturn of his lips made Arya aware of the change she had wrought. The notoriously ill-tempered demon was being pursued by a little girl saying, I missed you. So, is this why you tormented my dog and came here? He asked. Arya nodded without hesitation, leading him to believe she had come to play. Though that wasn't her intention, such unprovoked affection was suspicious. The Grand Duke feigned impatience, but he was already prepared to entertain her as he would his own son. Lloyd, knowing his father well, urged him to be calm. Miss is delicate. She can't handle your enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Arya was imagining the affectionate bond between father and son. It must be a beautiful sight, she mused. Unexpectedly, the Grand Duke was also complaining about Arya's frail constitution. He gets sick as soon as he arrives. I'm afraid I'll accidentally crush him. Seeing the Grand Duke's predicament, Arya declared her fondness for playing with dogs. This, however, caused Lloyd's face to darken. Was he less appealing than a dog? Desperate to recover, Arya quickly added, I like being quietly by your side. Sighing at the child's capriciousness, the Grand Duke kept Arya close. However, the smoke-filled room instantly transformed Arya into a crying mess. Lloyd pointed out the heavy workload, noting that Arya shouldn't be subjected to becoming a human smoke detector. Ignoring him, the Grand Duke instructed Lloyd to open the windows. Whoosh! The cold wind chilled Arya to the bone. Looking at the small, shivering figure, the Grand Duke, while muttering about the inconvenience, instinctively draped his coat over her. Arya peeked out from under the coat and saw the Grand Duke pick up her note, casually tucking it into his pocket. He told her to sit beside him and breathe properly. Breathing? She had been breathing properly until his comment made her suddenly self-conscious about it. What was with that look? Was he laughing at her? She felt both angry and wronged/distressed. Suddenly, with a bang, the mountain of documents on the desk caused the Grand Duke to erupt in frustration. Can't a man get a moment's peace? Hearing this, Lloyd brought even more documents, cheerfully adding, even if you don't breathe, you can still work. Sitting beside him, Arya noticed a document regarding compensation. An envoy who had visited Belinta for a marriage alliance had fallen ill upon returning home. The Viscount's family, seeking exorbitant compensation, deliberately spread rumors of a demonic curse. Knowing it was a pretext, the Grand Duke wasn't angry, but rather wished the Viscount would return so he could stab him a few more times. Belinta had its own laws, and as its ruler, he didn't need to overthink things. However, indulging in violence would only lead to more trouble. In that case, he mused, I'll just throw a few coins at him. He wanted to see just how greedy they could be. Would they eventually beg him to take action? Lloyd reminded him to watch his language, lest he corrupt the child. Arya, however, disagreed. Greed, once tasted, only grows. As if struck by an idea, Arya told the Grand Duke. She knew how to cure their illness. The Grand Duke looked at her quizzically, like a parent watching their child struggle with homework, waiting for her to elaborate. What she wrote, however, piqued his curiosity about the secrets this girl held. He was surprised by her maturity, so unlike a child her age. Then, unable to contain himself, he burst into laughter. What's so funny, she thought. He was just asking her to eliminate parasites. Drawing on memories from her past life, Arya deduced the cause of the illness from traces of forest life. He had to admit she was clever. To thank her, the Grand Duke granted her request to visit him daily. One day, the Hound led her elsewhere. Had they changed locations? Soon, the girl and the dog arrived at their destination, the villa where the Grand Duke had taken her in. Hoping to slip inside unnoticed, she was caught by a knight. Miss, what are you doing here? Are you playing detective or escape room? He quipped, glancing at the talkative knight. Arya wondered if she should play along. Being a child these days was certainly complicated. So, Arya fabricated a story about investigating a heinous crime. Just as she'd expected, the knight reacted, but why did his expression become so strange? And why did he say she'd come to the right place? Thankfully, the knight didn't follow her, but at the door, she heard a familiar voice. It was the Grand Duke. He was mocking a Viscount who had arrived uninvited, claiming he'd gotten himself infected with parasites from eating carelessly, and was now falsely accusing Belinta of cursing him. Even worse, the Viscount, pleading poverty, was asking the Grand Duke to allow him to pay the exorbitant compensation in installments. This shameless request caused the Grand Duke to erupt, drawing his sword. You spineless worm, are you looking for a beating? Lloyd rushed forward to intervene. Your Highness, calm down. We agreed to talk for 10 minutes before threatening him. However, the next second, the Viscount offered a family heirloom as part of the payment. Mollified, the Grand Duke sheathed his sword. That's not enough. You still owe 30 billion. I'll give you one more month. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Now get out of my sight. Arya didn't have time to react before the Viscount, fleeing in panic, knocked her off balance. Where did this wild child come from? The man, about to grab her roughly, noticed her hair color. He not only rudely ripped off her mask, but also revealed a vile smirk. So, it's the musician's brat. You look just like your mother. Here to sing for your supper? Well, give up on being a performer. With Belinta's wealth, we can make you famous throughout the Empire. You might even catch the Emperor's eye. Become a gilded cage bird. Just as he said, in her past life, Arya had been caged, frequently beaten black and blue, even having her legs broken, forced to sing. Even with torn vocal cords and coughing up blood, she hadn't been allowed to stop. In her despair, she had met Lloyd, and now his father was rescuing her in the same way. Lloyd sighed softly. Very well, leave the rest to me. The Grand Duke, his anger palpable, clearly sensed Arya's despair. Did she hate being the musician's daughter so much? He gently replaced her mask. Then, he instructed Lloyd to find the guest list for the musicians' gatherings. Not one of them will escape. Please, your Highness, have mercy. Dealing with one a day is exhausting enough. Lloyd didn't want the Grand Duke to burden him with this. Arya, holding the note the Grand Duke had kept, sincerely expressed her gratitude. He didn't realize that, for him, it had been a trivial act, and didn't understand what warranted such thanks. Looking at the sweet, well-behaved girl, he felt a surge of tenderness, a desire to spoil her endlessly. He wanted to shower her with affection. Why did I buy all this? He grumbled to himself. His perfectly good slaughterhouse had become a girl's playroom. Before he could dwell on his regret, he was once again swept away by Arya's effusive gratitude. She praised the flowers he'd sent, thanked him for the dolls, and showered him with compliments. "You're so handsome. I love you." The Grand Duke muttered about the inconvenience, but, like a cat drawn to a dangling string, he felt something was still missing in the room. He usually lit firecrackers to relieve stress, but catching Arya staring at him adoringly, he decided against it. "Oh, never mind." Arya made a small noise, attracting the Grand Duke's attention. She offered him a jar of candy. Wasn't that something only children ate? He'd learned that she couldn't swallow solid food. Perhaps it was a result of psychological trauma. Even the doctors hadn't found a solution. Only through communication, by venting the negative emotions built up in her heart, could she get better. Lloyd, however, didn't want the irascible Grand Duke to blame him. "You know the cause, but can't cure her? Drag him out and execute him. Your Highness, please calm down. He's the only one who's diagnosed the problem. If you kill him, no one will be able to treat her. The young lady enjoys your company. Perhaps, Your Highness, you could try spending time with her." Looking at the table covered in notes filled with Arya's praises, the Grand Duke mused. The little one should be arriving soon. "Marry me," Arya blurted out, startled by the sudden proposal. What's gotten into the old man today? She wondered, remembering she was the one who had, in a way, invited herself. Regardless, she felt she needed Lloyd's consent. She didn't want any animosity between them. However, the Grand Duke misinterpreted her hesitation as dislike and began to talk about his younger son, Vincent. Panicked, Arya quickly explained, "You can't force love if the young master isn't willing." She expressed her desire to stay by the Grand Duke's side. He reconsidered, thinking adopting a daughter wouldn't be so bad. "I heard you can't eat because you have difficulty expressing your emotions." "I don't quite understand what that means," he admitted. "But if anyone insults you, I'll rip their mouth apart. If anyone looks at you in a way that makes you uncomfortable, I'll gouge their eyes out. Don't be afraid. I'm here for you. Laugh if you want to. Cry if you want to. Do whatever you want." Lloyd, unable to stop his father, thought the girl would be frightened away. Instead, Arya's tears flowed like pearls from a broken string. She had felt like a discarded rag doll, forced to chase after strangers just to survive. Even if he were a demon, it wouldn't matter. Having cried herself to sleep, Arya awoke back in her bedroom. She tugged on Donna's sleeve, writing down her wish for breakfast. This time, it wasn't just warm soup, but French scrambled eggs, something she'd been craving. Donna, overcoming her surprise, immediately ordered the chef to prepare it. Soon, a fragrant plate arrived. The rich aroma of milk enveloped the tender scrambled eggs. Arya, eager to taste them, was stunned by the springy deliciousness. She realized she'd been missing out her entire life. Fighting back tears, she licked the plate clean, alarming the head chef. Arya reassured him, telling him how delicious and soft the eggs were. Before she could finish, she was overwhelmed by a flurry of desserts offered by the staff. "Miss, try the mustard-flavored cake. And the cookies. If nothing else, please have a sweet." This unprecedented experience filled Arya with gratitude. The head chef was so moved he was practically sobbing, and even his assistant couldn't help but grab someone's arm and punch it in excitement. For those who want to read the comic Devil's Pact early, you can search for it here. Type in Devil's Pact and click search to find it. Thank you for your support. Love you all. Past suffering had led to present redemption. What would the young man who disliked her do to drive her away now? Lloyd, with his raven black hair and elegant bearing, looked particularly handsome in the sunlight. Walking towards him was his blonde younger brother, Vincent. The two brothers, home for the holidays, were surprised to be ignored by the servants. The servants seemed preoccupied with constructing some sort of entertaining structure. Lloyd inquired about it and was shocked by what he learned. What has gotten in a father? He's building an amusement park in the mountains for that sickly girl? And why is she still here? Isn't she afraid of dying? Vincent, noticing his older brother's annoyance, was curious to see how Lloyd would react. He never expected Lloyd would contemplate burying their father alive. The two brothers traversed a large portion of the back mountain, finally stopping before a large tree. Following Lloyd's gaze, Vincent saw a young girl sleeping soundly, leaning against a leopard. Various animals surrounded her, more like guardians than a threat. Is this the innate ability of a siren? He wondered. She's not only tamed Lloyd's cheetah, but she's also captivated the demon Grand Duke of Villainous. Fascinating, truly fascinating. I wonder who will be the next to be tamed. Arya rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Was it her imagination, or had someone been here? The footprints on the ground confirmed her suspicions. Who could it have been? she pondered. Back at the villa, Arya resumed her self-imposed piggy-fattening project. Ever since overcoming her emotional block, exploring new culinary delights had become a source of great anticipation. Under Donna's meticulous care, despite her already rounded belly, Arya knew it wasn't enough. She needed to regain her strength quickly. Only then could she sing this song of life, a melody with the power to resurrect. Its counterpart, this song of ruin, held the power to steal souls. However, in her past life, she had only barely managed to sing it at the age of 14. Just before the news of Belinta's tragic annihilation reached her, time was of the essence. She needed to eat more. Oblivious to the curious glances around her, Donna brought her another steak. Arya's practiced and elegant dining etiquette piqued Donna's curiosity. The young lady's impeccable table manners clearly indicate rigorous training, she thought. Unbeknownst to Donna, this was muscle memory ingrained from Arya's past life, thanks to her father's strict tutelage. To avoid further suspicion, Arya feigned weakness, sullenly declaring she was too weak from hunger to eat. Internally, she cringed at her own performance. Now I've really dug myself into a hole, she thought. To her surprise, not only did no one question her, but the staff eagerly offered to assist, even engaging in a talent show of sorts to win the privilege. Their competitiveness gave Arya a headache. Sensing the situation, Donna shrewdly called out, "Miss, you prefer how I cut your meat. The rest of you, just stand there and learn." Dressed and ready, Arya looked like a porcelain doll. Donna informed her, "The young master has returned. Would you like to see him?" Arya shook her head vehemently. She suspected Lloyd would try to send her away again. It wasn't the right time to meet, not until she had the power to save the Grand Duchess. Lost in thought, Arya wandered into the library. Secluded and surprisingly soundproof, it seemed the perfect place to practice her singing. However, the sight before her stopped her in her tracks. A young man stood amidst a chaotic pile of books. His short blonde hair fell softly across his forehead, and his smiling eyes seemed to hold 1,000 stars. What secrets did this boy hold? The frail, venomous young man, Vincent, adopted by the demon Grand Duke for his exceptional talent. He became a celebrated genius, only to be cast out before Belinta's fall. Rumors circulated that he was a spy from the Sugo family. Since then, Vincent had reportedly lived a life consumed by alcohol, teetering on the edge of darkness, leading to a tragic end. But the young man before her didn't seem like someone resigned to such a fate. "Sister-in-law, do you enjoy philosophy?" Snapped out of her reverie, Arya glanced at the book she'd picked up at random. "I don't understand any of this," she thought. But in Vincent's eyes, her silence translated as interest. And so, Vincent launched into an enthusiastic display of his knowledge, leaving Arya sweating profusely under the barrage of information. He even insisted on pressing his favorite books into her hands. Arya was acutely aware of his misunderstanding, a misinterpretation that Vincent, with his sharp perception, quickly picked up on. He chuckled at his own fixation on intellectual brilliance and openly expressed his disdain for the ignorant, declaring their existence a waste of good air. Looking at the boy's genuinely innocent smile, Arya thought she finally understood why he'd been cast out. Their subsequent encounters felt less like coincidence and more like a carefully orchestrated prank. Arya decided to find a new sanctuary, only to be interrogated by Vincent about her purpose in being there. Having finally tracked her down, he proceeded to flaunt his supposed understanding of the book she was holding. Arya, reaching her limit, snapped, "Find me something appropriate." With a flourish and a whoosh, a book titled 3,000 Questions for Dummies materialized in his hands. 1 + 1 is equal to 22. 2 + 2 equals 3. It began. The insulted girl nearly spewed metaphorical lava onto his face. Back in her room, Arya paced restlessly, a sight that worried Donna, who had never seen the young lady in such a state. Little did she know, Arya was on the verge of eruption. "That golden retriever not only thinks I'm uncultured," she fumed, "but he's also following me everywhere, disrupting my singing practice. That brainless twit, I want to flush him down the toilet." Predictably, the next day brought another encounter. Vincent's mere presence exuded an aura of awkwardness that made Arya's skin crawl. To her dismay, he blocked her path, babbling incessantly about history behind her. His parting shot, "You idiot," finally broke her last shred of patience. Arya thrust the dummy's book back at him and, under his stunned gaze, resolutely sat down at the magnificent pipe organ. Instead of backing down, Vincent began critiquing her height. Ignoring him, Arya launched into a flawless rendition of her family's signature piece, effortlessly silencing him. Not only that, but she seamlessly transitioned into various other musical styles, mastering the pipe organ, an instrument known as the king of instruments, notorious for its difficulty and revered as the instrument of angels. It was said to have the power to transport souls to heaven. Lost in the music, Vincent felt as though he were waltzing through a field of flowers with his beloved, experiencing a newfound sense of freedom and lightness. However, this joy inevitably dissipated with the final notes. Noticing the melancholy in the boy's eyes, Arya let out a scornful laugh and, without a shred of remorse, told him to get lost. Just like husband, just like wife, Vincent thought, noting the identical phrasing. This only solidified his suspicion. This girl was a disruptive force, a chaotic element within the established order. Yet, she was also an undeniable musical prodigy. His own cherished talent, the source of his pride, paled in comparison before this supposed dummy. Not only had she cornered him in the library, but now he was bumping into her even while admiring the flowers. It was utterly preposterous. His obsession with talent stemmed from its ability to grant him everything he desired. He even speculated that Arya's frequent trips to the library were for secret musical practice. That mask, is it to hide your breathtaking beauty? He mused. Arya was speechless at his wild imagination. Meanwhile, Vincent continued his internal monologue, marveling. Neither of them seems to care about their stunning looks. What's a handsome fellow like myself supposed to do? Watching the preening peacock before her, Arya shuddered. He then brought up the book he'd been carrying, the same one he'd clutched in the library. New laws are about to be enacted, so why are you still studying the old ones? Do you aspire to be a judge? Vincent, clearly dissatisfied with her lack of response, changed the subject. He, the boy genius envied by all, was being actively avoided by this girl. Unbeknownst to him, his father had lauded him with the title genius countless times. In moments of joy, he'd praise Vincent as a gift from the heavens, while in fits of rage, he'd dismiss him as an irritating noise. Even in his drunken stupors, he'd lament how his daughter had stolen what was rightfully Vincent's. Witnessing his father's increasing despondency, Vincent became convinced of his own musical genius. His grandfather, a Seirin with formidable magical powers, was also a revered figure in the music world. Arya, having inherited all of her grandfather's gifts, understood the anger of those whose talents were overshadowed by hers. Yet, she derived no joy from it. Faced with the boy's attempts to engage her in discussions of musical prodigies, she felt no spark of interest. Even being hailed as a deity by the emperor couldn't shield her from the cruel confines and abuse she had endured. Unwilling to see him repeat her past tragedies, Arya warned Vincent against placing too much importance on the label of genius. It would only turn him into a plaything for his admirers. The boy, however, failed to grasp the meaning behind her words. Arya pressed on, telling him that those superficial gazes weren't worth striving for. True respect, she explained, was earned by simply being oneself. This was a difficult concept for the preening peacock to swallow. It further cemented his belief that she, like his brother, treated him with indifferent nonchalance. But a genius is a genius, he thought. No matter how unassuming, there's still a sun that draws all eyes. Refusing to indulge him, Arya retorted, "If you keep being this annoying, someone might just spit lava in your face. Can't you just shut up and be quiet?" After several hours of ensuing silence, the boy finally blurted out, "You're joking, right?" "I'm perfectly serious," Arya replied, "and I'd appreciate it if you'd remove yourself from my vicinity tactfully." Frozen in place, the boy realized that this girl was not the docile creature he'd perceived her to be. 7 parts languid, 3 parts aloof, and 1 part careless. He was intensely curious about her purpose here. He racked his brain, but couldn't fathom how a frail, sickly creature could even dream of protecting a cheetah a predator far stronger than herself. Let me cry. Ever since receiving her stepmother's last letter, Arya had been constantly on the lookout for the white dove. This time, however, things were different. The dove carried no letter, only a sprig of flowers. Arya surmised that her stepmother's condition had worsened. Just as she was about to formulate a reply, the dove, as if startled, abruptly flew away. Behind her, she heard the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of approaching footsteps. A figure in a black panther strolled leisurely towards her. Here to chase me off again? She wondered. The panther, tail wagging, stealthily approached. Arya, thinking it wanted to play, reached out, only for the panther to dart away at the last moment. She tried several more times, but the panther nimbly evaded her each time. This creature, is it toying with me? She thought, just like its owner. Unbeknownst to her, the owner in question, Lloyd, was equally perplexed. Regardless, Lloyd thought, this girl must leave. He intended to revoke the privileges he'd granted her. Hearing the expected response, Arya felt a flicker of inexplicable annoyance. Unaware of what she was planning, Lloyd watched as she suddenly extended her hand. Before Lloyd could react, a cry of pain echoed through the air. Arya stared at her hand, now bruised from the panther's impact. Relieved that the panther hadn't seriously injured her, she looked up to see Lloyd clutching her hand, his face etched with worry. He'd appeared without a sound, and now he was scolding her for being careless. Gently, he lifted her hand, chastising her lack of vigilance. This troublesome woman, he muttered under his breath. Arya looked at her tightly bandaged arm. It's not like it's broken, Arya thought. Isn't this a bit much? Is this your tactic? Every time I say I'm going to send you away, you either get sick or injured. Are you trying to make me care about you? Lloyd froze, embarrassed by his own foolish question. Care about you? He quickly turned away and denied it. I don't. Anyway, just leave as soon as you're healed. Arya was bewildered by his hot and cold attitude. Like pet, like owner, she mused. Unable to continue the conversation, Lloyd told her to go to the infirmary. Arya couldn't help but smile. He really is a kind boy with a tough exterior, she thought. Without Vincent's interruptions, Arya was able to practice her singing in the library as she'd wished. She could now manage the songs of peace and nature, as well as the control songs, charm, forgetfulness, and sleep. But the songs of life and destruction. The moment she opened her mouth to attempt them, a searing pain shot through her, causing her to collapse on the floor. She'd been diligently eating and exercising and could easily sing a line or two of the other songs. But life and destruction remained locked away, impossible to even begin. Do I really have to wait 4 years? But Lloyd can't wait that long, and my stepmother definitely can't. The thought made Arya's head throb. Armed with the experience of her past life, she'd assumed that diligent practice would be enough. But she possessed all this magical power and couldn't use it. Lying on the floor, lost in thought, a sudden realization struck her. Perhaps the one who created the barrier could help her. Even living a second time, she hadn't been able to change anything. Desperate for a way to access her power, Arya didn't notice the man walking towards her. By the time she reacted, she was already sprawled on the floor. Scattered documents caught her attention. This is... Before she could examine them closely, the man erupted in a torrent of curses. Recognizing her as the young lady, his demeanor instantly shifted to one of profuse apologies. Under her scrutinizing gaze, the Baron grew flustered. He hastily explained that he was merely there to help organize the documents. While straightening her dress, Arya snuck a few more glances at the document's contents. That strange look. Could she have seen something? The Baron worried. He then muttered dismissively, what could an uneducated brat like her understand? Besides, the madam's time is almost up. I'm sure I'll be rid of her soon. It was only then that Arya understood why Lloyd had been so fixated on that old legal codex. A sudden unease washed over her. Watching the Baron walk away, a mischievous thought sparked in her mind. With a sharp whistle, a flock of doves gathered at the window. Following her command, they launched a coordinated attack, pecking at the Baron until he cried out in pain. In the chaos, they also snatched several important documents. Hearing the commotion below, Arya knew her work was done. Without looking back, she headed off to find the Grand Duke. As she opened the door, she was greeted by a familiar canine face. Arya cheerfully greeted the dog and asked him about powerful individuals in Belenta through a process of elimination. They finally pinpointed the person's location, but the door was firmly shut. How was she supposed to get in? She'd thought that finding this person would be the key to unlocking her powers and saving her stepmother. But despite her persistent knocking, there was no response. but Arya could hear sounds from within. If that's the case, she thought, don't blame me for being impolite. The dog beside her, understanding instantly, lunged forward. With a crash, Arya entered, apologizing as she went, while inwardly praising the dog's quick thinking. This, however, enraged the room's occupant, who roared, "Just what is wrong with this awful family? Haven't you caused enough trouble?" Arya quickly apologized for her rudeness. When she learned that the man was a sorcerer, not only occupying a tower, but also freely using magic, strictly forbidden within the Empire, Carlin impatiently declared, "This isn't a playground. I don't have time for games." But the slips of paper in Arya's hand made his expression change dramatically, sparking a flicker of interest. Anyone who can sense energy is a genius, he mused, but to visualize it like this, a genius among geniuses. Through their conversation, it became clear that Arya needed 5 or 6 more years to reach her full potential. "But I don't have that kind of time," she pleaded. She hoped he could help her forcibly awaken her latent abilities. Carlin found her wishful thinking exasperating. "Are you insane?" he snapped. "The energy within your core is like blood in the human body. Once it's depleted, life ends. So, young miss, give up on that idea." "So you do know a way to awaken latent potential?" Arya pressed. "Of course," Carlin admitted, "but the individual has to be incredibly powerful. Otherwise, it's suicide. With your meager energy, just forget about it." Faced with the man's dismissive gesture, Arya, wrestling with her inner turmoil, made her choice. A sudden surge of potent magical energy stunned Carlin. This damn girl. She was playing weak. He immediately demanded to know her purpose. Arya knew the consequences of revealing her true nature, but this man was her only hope. With a steady gaze, she confessed, "I am a Saren." The words sent a shiver down Carlin's spine. "Did you not hear me? I said I'm a Saren," Arya exclaimed, exasperated. "What's with that attitude? I'm practically worshipped as a goddess by the Emperor, and you're looking down on me? What gives?" Unbeknownst to her, Carlin, ever the pragmatist, was simply intrigued. A Saren with a max-level energy core. He muttered, "Sealed, yet able to conceal her power. Even use it directly. Such a prodigy, yet willing to squander it like a brute." Arya explained that she was a child born from a forced union between her father and a Saren, treated as a tool from birth, and cruelly sold simply because she couldn't speak. Her calm recounting made Carlin's blood boil, but he still refused her reckless request. "Why the rush?" he asked. "I have to change the future," Arya declared, "even if it makes me seem crazy." Just as she was about to elaborate, Carlin interrupted, rubbing his aching head. He showed no curiosity about her apparent ability to foresee the future. He didn't want to hear it, didn't want to change anything. "Everyone has a predetermined fate," he stated. "We're all like gears in a clock. Change one thing, and you risk breaking the entire mechanism. If you don't want destruction, you have to replace other gears. And that comes with a price you can't imagine." Arya understood. Resurrecting Donna might mean sacrificing a life. If she didn't change things, that kind, gentle boy would become a weapon of slaughter once more. No, Arya murmured, shaking her head. Looking around the sparsely furnished tower room, still unwilling to give up, she suddenly posed a strange question that left Carlin bewildered. "If what you say is true," she began, "and knowing the future inevitably leads to a desire to change it, then why does he still exist? It means he represents the will of the machine itself. Therefore," she concluded, "you have to listen to me." Ignoring Carlin's protests, Arya continued, "Even if the future is difficult to change, even if nothing changes, I can distinguish right from wrong. If the machine is broken, I have a reason to help fix it. Instead of fearing the price," she declared, "it's better to shoulder the burden and try with all my might." Carlin, despite himself, admired her courage. "One person against the fate of all," he muttered, shaking his head. "Suffering so much yourself, yet still trying to shield others." He sighed, resigned. "Let time be the judge of your choice, then." Arya smiled and asked him to escort her out of the city. And so, under someone's disgruntled gaze, Carlin retrieved a long-hoarded teleportation scroll, a sudden feeling of being tricked bubbling in his chest. Before she left, he told Arya to return quickly. After all, he grumbled, that puppet won't fool those two for long. Unsure if he was doing the right thing, he repeated his warning. "If you encounter danger, come back immediately." The moment Arya tore the scroll, the dog beside her lunged forward. Just like that, girl and dog vanished without a trace. Teleporting to the Holy Empire, Arya surveyed her surroundings. A sudden bark reminded her of the dog that had followed her. Arya glared at him, scolding him for his impulsiveness and recklessness. But looking at his dejected expression, she couldn't help but stroke his head. "You silly, lovable mutt," she sighed. "Well, since you're here, let's do this together." Girl and dog arrived at a village. This was the Empire's exile land, a gathering place for vagrants and criminals. Arya pulled up her hood. Despite her caution, she was still, deliberately knocked down by someone, a drunken vagrant. However, his poorly concealed pink hair caught the vagrant's eye. The man cursed crudely, already plotting to sell her. Fresh out of the gate, and I run into a creep, Arya thought, exasperated. Not only does he bump into me, but he insists on grabbing my face. Seeing the strawberry shortcake, as the vagrant leeringly called her, sent the protective dog into a furious frenzy. Arya, watching the now terrified vagrant flee, felt a surge of relief. Pulling her cloak tighter, she couldn't help but sigh. This place is chaotic. She told the dog to hide in the forest. Otherwise, she muttered, we'll be making a trip to the market. Watching the sky darken, she knew she needed to hurry. Even a short journey was fraught with unexpected dangers and filth. Carefully picking her way, Arya finally reached the dilapidated temple. No one, except perhaps the saint who pitted all beings, would think to look for a sacred relic here. Carefully searching the area, Arya felt something strange beneath her feet. Brushing aside the overgrown grass, she revealed an entrance to a basement. However, she wasn't strong enough to open it, and the noise she made alerted someone nearby. Arya quickly hid and cautiously peered out. It was another drunken vagrant. With all her strength, she finally pushed open the heavy door. But inside it was pitch black. There was nothing there. Arya searched the temple for a while longer, drawn to a single, well-preserved box. She eagerly opened it. Inside lay a withered tree branch, a sacred relic imbued with the aura of divine punishment. Having found what she sought, Arya knew she had to return quickly, continuing to feel along the wall. Her fingers brushed against a protrusion. Unable to resist her curiosity, she pulled out the loose brick and discovered a small hidden compartment. After some fumbling, she found a delicate necklace. It appeared to be the saint's personal ornament, yet it held no discernible power. Deciding to take it back for further study, she finally managed to climb out of the basement, only to be immediately surrounded by several burly men. One of them, holding her like a scruff of a kitten, demanded she hand over whatever she'd found. The worthless trinket he received infuriated him. Glancing at Arya, he rudely ripped off her cloak. Her long, pink hair instantly captivated the group. They decided she was worth far more than any trinket and would fetch a handsome price. Little did they know, their intended victim was already plotting their downfall. As the threat loomed closer, Arya prepared to defend herself, but was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a young man. The thugs weren't fazed. Instead, they were thrilled at the prospect of selling him too. The young man, righteous and indignant, attempted to reason with them, appealing to their sense of morality. This only provoked raucous laughter from the outlaws. They mocked him, challenging his faith. "If your God truly exists," they jeered, "let him punish us now." What began as a heroic rescue attempt quickly devolved into a brutal beating, leaving the young man crumpled on the ground like a rag doll. He seemed to be a knight in training. Regardless, he had tried to help her. With a sharp whistle, Arya's dog appeared, majestic and imposing. Remembering the Grand Duke's penchant for feeding people to his hounds, she looked away. A moment later, the dog returned, panting and nudging her hand with a scrap of cloth, seeking praise. "That liar," Arya muttered, thinking of the Grand Duke. Preparing to leave, she noticed the unconscious young man. With some effort, she dragged him onto the dog's back. It would delay her, but her conscience wouldn't allow her to leave him. Arya settled the young man at the cathedral and turned to go but paused. She worried that the ordeal might leave the idealistic young man scarred. So she left a small note of encouragement. They would likely never meet again, but she sincerely hoped he would retain his youthful idealism. Leaving the cathedral, Arya, her pink hair hidden beneath her hood, seemed to attract trouble, from drunken vagrants to opportunistic pickpockets. Even her journey home was plagued by unwanted attention. snapping back to reality. Arya quickly pushed away the unwelcome face that had invaded her personal space. Compared to Lloyd, this man was truly repulsive. A distraught Carlin informed her that someone had accused the second young master of being a spy for the water serpent. Arya had expected this, but not so soon. "Are you close to the second young master?" Carlin asked. "Is that why you left the city?" "To help him." Wary of being drawn into the conflict, Carlin cautioned, "If you want to prove his innocence, you'd better hurry." At his words, Arya immediately mounted her dog, issuing a series of rapid commands. Meanwhile, the Duke, holding a firecracker, stared silently at his younger son. He then turned to the Earl and the water serpent representative. "Have you ever met him?" he asked. Hearing their confirmations, he frowned slightly. This boy, who had crossed the mountains alone, his body bearing the marks of an arduous journey, stood before them, claiming to be of Villainous blood. Not only that, but in a desperate bid for recognition, he relentlessly showcased his talents. The Duke didn't care about the boy's origins. He only wanted to know for certain if the boy was a spy. However, his retainer's incessant accusations were wearing on his patience. He addressed his son again. "Are you a spy? Why were you there?" "No, I'm not. I was only trying to protect myself." Vincent insisted, but the Duke remained unconvinced. He urged Vincent to think carefully before answering, but the boy only fell silent. "Very well," the Duke declared. "You will be imprisoned." He hadn't expected his father's decision. To remind him of his sister-in-law's words, genius can be both a blessing and a curse. It was ironic that he only understood now. Just as despair began to consume him, a girl suddenly grabbed his arm. The unexpected action left the guards momentarily bewildered. Before Vincent could ask what was happening, Arya's hand was pulled away by Lloyd, who warned her against unnecessary contact. The commotion caused the Duke to frown. He had specifically ordered that no one interrupt them. "Has something worse happened?" he inquired. Hearing this, Arya held up the withered branch. The retainers began murmuring amongst themselves, assuming the two were there to cause trouble. However, Vincent instantly recognized the sacred relic. Could it be that my sister-in-law is the chosen one? He wondered aloud. At that moment, hearing the Earl's skeptical question, Vincent retorted, "This is the judgment of God. Deception before it will be punished by the divine." Seeing the Earl's disbelief, Arya suggested they test the relic's power. Starting with Vincent, she said, "Are you a spy for the water serpent?" "I am not," Vincent declared. The relic remained inert. "Have you done anything to harm your family?" Vincent denied it again, and the relic showed no reaction. "Then why were you found in the water serpent's lair?" Vincent hesitated, unable to fully explain, only repeating that he meant no harm. The Duke, not wanting to delve deeper, simply said, "That's enough." This displeased the Earl. That wretched child was always thwarting his plans. He had thought his son's punishment was a fluke, but now he had ruined things again. The red-haired water serpent representative, noticing the Earl's fury, remarked, "That branch isn't just a toy, is it?" This caused Lloyd to chuckle. He thrust the relic into the representative's hands and instructed him to say, "I am innocent." The moment the words left his mouth, a bolt of lightning struck him, leaving the Earl trembling in fear. He stammered, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that he had acted out of loyalty. But the Duke saw through his lies, recognizing his intent to frame Vincent. "Do you have a personal grudge against him?" he demanded. The Earl fumbled for an explanation, and this triggered a memory in Vincent of a past unpleasant encounter with the Earl. "So, it turns out not having a brain can actually hurt you," Vincent remarked. "My apologies." The Earl maintained a calm facade, but his inner rage was barely contained. Vincent continued to taunt him. "If you want to ruin someone," he said, "don't just go around biting like a mad dog. Use your brain if you have one." "That damn brat. I know your secrets," the Earl seethed. Despite his loathing for the boy, he feigned friendliness. Lloyd, unimpressed, tossed the relic to him. "Answer the question," he said. "No more nonsense." At that moment, Arya tugged on Lloyd's sleeve, urging him to ask, "Did you falsify legal documents?" The question stunned everyone in the room. How does she know? The Earl thought, panicked. He had been so discreet. Only the second young master had suspected anything, which is why he'd had to be dealt with. Could Vincent have told her? He wondered. But the young man's surprised expression seemed genuine. Then a thought struck him. Could it have been that day I bumped into her? But she's just a country bumpkin. How could she have learned everything so quickly? Before they could dwell on it, Lloyd began listing their crimes, silencing them both. The Duke's voice boomed. "Is this true? Cat got your tongue," he pressed, the atmosphere growing heavy with tension. Why am I the only one being questioned? The Earl sputtered, struggling to regain composure. He glanced at the water serpent representative and shoved the branch into his hands. In his panic, the representative blurted out everything, both what he should and shouldn't have said. Even the relic seemed to confirm his guilt. The Duke watched coldly, allowing them to expose each other. With a sharp unsheathing of his sword, the Duke, tired of their bickering, decided to end it. The intense killing intent radiating from the Duke terrified Arya. Lloyd, noticing her fear, felt a pang of sympathy. He gently covered her eyes. Seeing this, Vincent tenderly covered her ears. The next moment, the sound of splattering liquid filled the air, followed by screams and the metallic scent of blood. The Earl, desperate, pleaded for mercy, offering a secret in exchange. Second young master. He's a bastard. The Duke's expression remained unchanged. I don't care about his origins, he stated flatly. Vincent, his old wounds ripped open, trembled uncontrollably. Arya sensed his fear. The Earl, fueled by malice, continued. Not only that, but the second young master is the son of a water serpent's whore. Is this the secret he'd rather be exiled from Barinta than reveal? Vincent thought the truth now laid bare. His trips to the sewers were attempts to rescue his unfortunate mother. The Earl's face twisted with envy. He, who had gained wealth and status through marriage, had lost everything in a power struggle. That lowly bastard, just because of his connection to Barinta, became a celebrated genius, even his superior. The second young master took his mother away. Did he keep her alive or kill her? Even if he hasn't done anything yet, who's to say he won't betray us later? The Earl's words pierced Vincent like daggers, shattering his defenses. He felt the familiar sting of being seen as nothing more than the son of a water serpent's whore. Then Arya took his hand again. She wanted to tell him not to be afraid, that it wasn't his fault, but the Duke reiterated, I don't care about his origins. A sickening crack echoed through the room, silencing the Earl permanently. The Duke wiped the blood from his face, muttering, no one ever lets me finish a sentence. He glanced back, ordering the guards to remove the children. Arya, Lloyd, and Vincent were ushered out. Lloyd, fuming at being treated like a child, was about to barge back in when he saw the gentle curve of Arya's face. His anger inexplicably subsided. But I'm supposed to be angry, he thought, confused. Arya, sensing his gaze, met his eyes. He handed her a small card, saying, I did everything you asked before coming here. He was quietly reading in his room when Arya simply knocked and entered without waiting for a response. Lloyd, finding himself indulging her, asked what she needed. She trotted over to him, seemingly intent on exercising the authority he had granted her. Though slightly disappointed she hadn't asked for something for herself, he was curious to hear her request. He waited patiently, a flicker of anticipation in his eyes. To his surprise, she simply asked him to obey her. He had initially given her that authority, hoping she would ask for money or valuables so she could leave. He hadn't expected her to use it on someone else. Doesn't she have anything she wants for herself? He wondered. He searched her calm face, but found no trace of avarice or ambition. Could she truly be as frivolous as she seems? He mused. Regardless, she had to leave. Spotting Vincent walking by, Lloyd decided to speak with him. Even after Vincent had walked away, Lloyd remained where he stood, lost in thought. As Arya approached him, he began to understand Vincent's need to show off. He realized how, despite his best efforts, Vincent couldn't escape the shadow of his birth. He also understood that Vincent's boasting about being a musical prodigy stemmed from a place of vulnerability. You know, Lloyd said, a hint of amusement in his voice, you're actually quite endearing when you brag. Just try not to let your pride lead to an early grave. Unsure if Lloyd was comforting or threatening him, Vincent was taken aback when Lloyd suddenly ruffled his hair. The unexpected gesture made Vincent blush. Arya, realizing her forwardness, fled under Vincent's shy gaze. She spent several days in the library, but didn't see him. Has he not recovered from the embarrassment yet? She wondered. If he goes back to the water serpent's lair to save his mother and gets banished again, will the Duke go looking for him like he did in my past life? A sudden call interrupted her thoughts. Arya, it's been a while. It was Carlin. My brother and the Duke not only rescued your mother, but they also found a safe place for her. I wanted to tell you personally. I see, Arya replied, pondering whether this would change Barinta's fate. Why are you helping me? She asked. I'm not helping you, Carlin replied. I'm helping someone I care about. Then I am too, Vincent chimed in, appearing from behind a bookshelf. Don't flatter yourself, Carlin retorted. You're just benefiting from his kindness. So, do you think I still have a chance? Vincent pressed. Even a 0.1% chance would do. Faced with Vincent's persistence, Carlin relented. Then try your best. You're so biased, Vincent exclaimed, turning to Arya. You're actually telling me to work hard for a 0.1% chance, he complained. What, you don't want to? Carlin challenged. Yeah, I'm pretty confident in my ability to work hard, Vincent declared with a grin. Just then, the Duke summoned Arya. Carlin was there as well. The Duke rapped his knuckles on the table, his expression displeased. Did you give him the sacred relic? He demanded. Miss Arya wheedled it out of me, Carlin replied quickly. Wheedled? She wheedled? The Duke repeated incredulously. Arya had never asked him for anything. Why not me? Why that little urchin? Sensing the Duke's sudden surge of jealousy, Carlin quickly corrected himself. Not wheedled, Your Grace. She asked politely. Yes, politely. Politely? He's going mad. She asked that clueless idiot politely. The Duke fumed, silently raging. Carlin, the unwitting scapegoat, wanted to cry. What do you want from me? Back in the tower, Arya handed the necklace she had found to Carlin. This thing has no energy, Carlin observed, turning it over in his hands. It feels more like a curse that drains life force. Like those legendary, magic swords that constantly absorb the wielder's energy. He tried channeling his magic into it. It glowed briefly, then went dark again. Arya tried as well, with the same result. Is it only interested in victory? She wondered aloud. But now wasn't the time to investigate. Pretty boy, why don't you help me activate this energy box? Arya suggested. Absolutely not, Carlin retorted. Don't even think about it. You're a liar, Arya accused. Who are you calling a liar? Carlin snapped back. You're wasting such a powerful gift. Aren't you afraid of losing your life because of it? He continued, his voice sharp with concern. And don't think I don't know you went to the Forbidden Zone after returning from the cathedral. Arya's sudden distraction irritated him. He figured she'd just plead with him again after he finished his lecture. So frustrating. Are you really that eager to die? He demanded, knowing she wouldn't listen. He didn't wait for her response. He ripped open a scroll and vanished. Used to his dramatic exits, Arya simply called out to her dog. Next time you see him, bite him. Got it. Days turned into weeks. Arya hadn't heard from Vincent's mother since receiving the flower branch. She stood downstairs, gazing out at the pouring rain, oblivious to the downpour, her mind consumed with thoughts of how to save her. A black umbrella appeared above her, snapping her out of her reverie. It was Lloyd, the person she wanted to protect more than anyone. You stubborn thing, Lloyd sighed. The moment I send you away, you come out here to get soaked. Are you trying to get sick again? He scolded gently. Do you think you're flower? Constantly needing water. Arya tried to come up with an excuse. She couldn't very well tell him. She simply hadn't bothered to avoid the rain. Don't you ever get tired of this? Lloyd asked. What are you doing just standing here every day? She was waiting for a message from Vincent's mother, but she couldn't tell him that. Her silence infuriated him. Why do you insist on standing here? He demanded. Before Arya could answer, a maid rushed towards them, her voice panicked. What is it? Lloyd asked sharply. It's Madam. Madam has collapsed. The maid gasped. She might not make it through the night. Arya had expected this, but not so soon. She turned to rush to Carlin, but Lloyd grabbed her arm. Lloyd, what's wrong? She asked, noticing his hesitant expression. He seemed concerned about her wrist and offered her a room far from the construction. He even told her to ask for anything she needed. Arya, with no time for his solicitations, pulled away. Lloyd handed her the umbrella and insisted she leave, calling for Donna to attend to her. Arya watched him go, a wave of frustration washing over her. Time ticked by relentlessly. The rain intensified. Donna urged her to rest and quickly departed. Zli elude Daria. Her thoughts raced, searching for a way to save Vincent's mother. She had been given this chance, and she was determined to change things. Resolving to sneak out, she opened her bedroom door and was surprised to find her dog waiting outside. She hushed its enthusiastic greeting and, mounting the dog, rode back to the tower. The moment she saw Carlin, she stated her purpose. Only I can save her now. Please, help me activate the energy box. As expected, he refused. This is her fate. You can't fight it, he said, though his conviction wavered. Arya's unwavering gaze seemed to pierce through him. He was startled by a sudden, reckless thought. I must be crazy, he muttered. Forcibly activating it, you'll die. Even so, I won't give up, Arya insisted, her determined gaze urging him to hurry. He warned her about the severe side effects, but she remained unmoved. Looking at her stubborn face, Carlin sighed. Just promise me you'll come back alive, or I'll kill you myself. Carlin pricked his finger, drawing a rune on Arya's forehead with his blood. As a light flared, he explained, I've created a false pathway with a spell. Without waiting for her questions, he snapped his fingers, and a teleportation circle appeared beneath Arya's feet. Caught off guard, she had no time to react. Before she arrived in Vincent's mother's room, silence hung heavy in the air. She was alone. As she approached the bed, a raspy voice stopped her. Though weak, the voice held an undeniable authority. Get out, Vincent's mother rasped, followed by a fit of coughing. Arya remembered hearing that Vincent's mother always drove people away when she was near death, even her husband and son. Had she given up, or did she simply not want anyone to witness her vulnerability? Through the gauzy curtains, Vincent's mother saw a small figure, but couldn't make out the face. Arya saw the woman's withered arm, a stark reminder of the suffering she endured. Arya began to sing, her voice a dreamlike melody that transcended time and space, easing the woman's pain. Guided by the song, Vincent's mother felt herself transported to a lush green meadow, a place of peace and freedom. A violent cough racked her body, leaving her weak and helpless. But the song continued, offering strength and hope, urging her to return to her family. Her eyes flew open. She was back in her bedroom. I'm alive, she murmured in disbelief. As if sensing something, she seemed to realize who had saved her. What price would Arya pay for this act of defiance? Vincent's mother drifted back to sleep, just as Arya breathed a sigh of relief. A sharp pain ripped through her, and she coughed up blood. If this is the price of a false pathway, she thought, opening a true one would have killed me. At least she had saved Vincent's mother. Arya ripped open a scroll and vanished. The short-distance teleportation landed her in the courtyard. Wiping the blood from her lips, she heard a familiar voice. You're in the rain again. It was Lloyd. How long had he been standing there? Had he seen her stumble? Are those tears, or just rain? He asked. Arya, caught off guard, suddenly realized he sounded like a narrator in an opera. Was he pitying her? Not wanting to explain, she turned to leave, but he muttered, so troublesome, and with a graceful leap, landed before her. Don't stand in the rain, he scolded gently, and don't let people bully you. Please, don't treat yourself like this. His earnest plea surprised her. She reached out, almost unconsciously, and stroked his hair. The softness of his hair brought a blush to her cheeks. He really was just a child. Unaware of the effect her touch had on him, Lloyd asked, What are you doing? The tingling sensation where her hand rested made him strangely self-conscious. Arya remembered the comforting feeling of Donna's hand on her head when she was upset. I just don't want you to be in so much pain, she murmured. Lloyd stared at her, stunned, as she continued to gently stroke his hair. He stood there, frozen, letting her continue. Worried about going bald, Lloyd immediately put on a sour expression. He grabbed her hand, annoyed. Do you think I'm as fragile as you? That sickly guy is clinging to you. Is he tired of living? Despite his impatience, Lloyd pulled Arya's hand, dragging her toward the mansion. Seeing the two of them soaked, a maid hurried to bring towels. Lloyd immediately draped a towel over Arya, muttering, Don't go soft on him. You have to leave this place. His words dripped with disdain for Barenta. Still talking, he pulled her toward the bathroom, thoughtfully running the hot water. Can you bathe yourself? He asked. Arya stared at him as if he were an idiot. She wasn't a 3-year-old. Then she noticed the near-boiling water he'd drawn. Did he intend to cook her in it? Lloyd, noticing her petting the water serpent, swatted her hand away. He then stomped to the wardrobe, picking out fresh clothes for her. With a final, hurry up and wash, he left the room. Arya knew he hadn't gone far. She also understood his anger. But even if Vincent were sick, his mother had still driven him away. Sure enough, the next moment she heard Lloyd ordering a guard to find him a house. I'll be moved in 2 days, he declared from outside the door. Once we're married, you won't be able to leave. Hearing the door open, Lloyd asked, What are you doing out here? Arya replied, I won't run, and I won't forget why I came here. Even if you don't like it, we can get divorced. But for now, please marry me. Lloyd stared at her, stunned, before stammering. Did you even hear what I said? What do you even want? Arya grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, and before he could react, kissed him on the cheek. Lloyd stared at her for a long moment, then slowly touched his cheek. He heard her say something about him being responsible. This girl, she'd taken advantage of him, and now she was feigning innocence, slamming the door in his face. "Damn it, open the door," he yelled. Meanwhile, Arya, hiding in the bathwater, felt her heart pounding. Donna, arriving at the commotion, feared the worst, but found the two of them in a surprisingly peaceful scene. Surely he hasn't frightened Miss Arya again, she thought. Arya peeked out of the water and found Lloyd glaring at her. Sensing something amiss, Donna asked, "What's wrong?" Lloyd was silent for a moment, then sighed dramatically. "That audacious rabbit dared to." He trailed off. "That was mine. Mine. This is so frustrating." Arya, realizing what had happened, asked, "Was that your first kiss?" The question seemed to ignite Lloyd's fury. "Why do you want to marry me?" he demanded. It seemed he was waiting for her answer to make a decision. Even so, Arya didn't want to lie to him. "I want to help the person who saved me find his happiness." Before he could process her words, they heard hurried footsteps. "Something big has happened." "No, I mean miracle, madam. Madam Vincent is out of bed." No, I mean Madam Vincent is cured." Lloyd's face was a mask of disbelief. Fighting the urge to draw his sword, he snapped, "What nonsense are you spouting?" But he desperately wanted to know if it was true. Another crash echoed through the mansion. Suddenly, Arya stumbled, collapsing to the floor. Lamenting her own weakness, she thought, Vincent's mother is all right. That's wonderful. But her body burned as if consumed by fire. Through the haze of pain and the sound of running water, she saw Lloyd beside her. "Why are you crying so hard?" Was he asking himself for her? Her body ached intensely. She wasn't sure if she cried out loud. She heard Lloyd trying to remove her sweat-soaked mask. Sensing her reluctance, he said, "I have to know what my future wife looks like." Their eyes met. Then Arya shyly turned her face away. "Are you sure you want to marry me? Didn't you say you wanted to get married?" She hated her weak, failing body, yet she'd accepted his proposal. "I'm sorry. I didn't go out in the rain to make you worry." Lloyd shrugged it off. "I'm not going to hold it against a silly rabbit like you." Arya thought, he called me silly, but at least he isn't sending me away. She noticed him covering his cheek, likely embarrassed by his appearance. "I don't care about that," Lloyd said. Clutching the blanket, Arya asked, "Will you send me away because I'm ugly?" Lloyd, baffled by her train of thought, replied, "What does that have to do with anything? Besides, you're my first. Anyway, can I take off your mask?" Arya nodded nervously. "It's okay." But as his hand reached out, a wave of anxiety washed over her. Would he like a monster like her? The residual warmth of the mask in his hand made her ears burn. Her heart pounded like thunder. When she looked at him with wide, questioning eyes, a strange shyness overcame Lloyd. He abruptly tossed the warm towel onto her face. Did he find her that repulsive? So fickle. Then she heard him introduce himself. "I'm Arya," she said softly. Only then did Lloyd seem to realize the awkwardness of their reunion. He murmured her name, gently replacing the towel with a fresh one and telling her to rest. Elsewhere, the Pope listened to the injured young knight, who kept murmuring about someone familiar. Who was it? Why did he keep asking if they were all right? As his consciousness returned, he realized it was the saint. But why was she crying? It felt like a sacrilege. The young knight sat up abruptly, wincing at the pain. He was still curious why she was so upset. The saint gently touched his wounds, wiping away her tears. "I was so worried about you," she confessed. "Thank you to all the fans who love the Devil's Contract comic. I'll keep working hard." The Empire's golden eyes, revered for their divine power, were a symbol of status and strength. The saint, beloved for her compassion, felt ashamed of her own impure eye color. Meanwhile, Baloney was crying heartbrokenly. He'd found the young knight unconscious at the entrance to the papal hall and, fearing for his life, had brought him to the infirmary. He hadn't thought twice, and now berated himself for his own helplessness. The knight, however, firmly denied his self-deprecation. God loves everyone. By belittling yourself, are you disregarding God's love? Baloney quickly waved his hands, denying any such intention. Baloney sighed inwardly and patiently asked about his injuries. This brought back the memory of his brutal beating. "And what about that child? He's probably been sold into slavery by now." He confessed to the saint, his voice filled with remorse. "It's my fault. I was too weak to save him. I'm a knight, named Gabriel by the Pope himself, yet I can do nothing. Am I only fit to rot in some dark corner?" Hearing this, the saint reached out to him with kindness. "You were brave. It wasn't your fault. Don't blame yourself. Please don't doubt the path you've chosen." The young knight, deeply moved, was completely oblivious to the lingering strangeness in his body. Perhaps this was the meaning of his persistence. "Please believe me. Never waver in your convictions." Having said this, he stared at the young knight with an unsettling intensity. It was him. He He was the one who discovered the future pope. A cry of pain snapped him out of his morbid excitement. For better control, Bologna offered to stay by the young knight's side. Gabriel, touched by his kindness, took his hand and swore, "If you're willing to stay with me, I would gladly give my life for you." The saint felt a surge of disgust, but maintained the pretense of having forgotten to heal him. Then, pressing her forehead against the young knight's, she released her holy power. Thankfully, he possessed a powerful inner energy, otherwise who knows when she would have finished. The saint urged him to rest. Everyone she met on her way greeted her with a smile until the moment she returned to her room and closed the door. As if remembering something, she flung open a drawer with a furious expression. Inside lay a crumpled note. "Ah, you did well. How amusing." She tore it to shreds, a mocking smile on her face. "No matter who it is, that boy will be mine." Half awake, Arya heard someone talking about her. It was Lloyd and his younger brother. "He doesn't make a sound, no matter how much it hurts." "Brother, he's mute." As if I didn't know that. Why even ask? Even so, he still felt she was enduring immense pain. Vincent, curious, tried to interrupt his brother mid-sentence, but was cut off, growing increasingly annoyed by their casual disregard for him. Arya rolled her eyes again. She wasn't sure what they were doing, but the pain brought tears to her eyes. Lloyd, who had been watching her intently, couldn't help but reach out and wipe them away. Perhaps she was startled, as she was constantly being watched or touched while she slept. Even though sister-in-law is a mentally strong siren, her body is as fragile as a porcelain doll. Personality aside, you two aren't suited for each other. He might drive you mad. Sister-in-law may not be able to speak, but she's naturally gifted with the ability to control emotions. The Barontes, on the other hand, have always been weak-willed. If he wanted to, he could manipulate you without lifting a finger. You might believe he wouldn't, but what if he does? Lloyd snapped, telling him to shut up. But Arya, having heard this, was gripped by a deeper fear. Are you still denying it? Everyone who was captivated by your singing went mad, didn't they? What she thought was salvation might be Lloyd's downfall. She couldn't bear to think of the consequences. Maybe listening once or twice is fine, but he's definitely forcing himself, unlike the Emperor. Meanwhile, Lloyd confronted the culprit. Carlin stammered. It's because the young Mrs. Internal Energy is in disarray. Not understanding, Lloyd told him to speak plainly. She's just overexerted herself. Seeing Lloyd appeased, Carlin suggested, taking this should do the trick. Flustered at the prospect of being discovered, Carlin pulled out a jar of spring water. He'd intended to instruct a maid to administer it, but Lloyd snatched it from his hand, indicating he would handle it. Once Carlin was out of earshot, Lloyd stared at the jar, perplexed. Arya, still aching all over, couldn't see clearly, but heard a voice telling her to stay still and drink it so she could get better quickly. Was it him? The pain, however, brought a wave of overwhelming distress. This, in turn, evoked a pang of sympathy from Lloyd. "Having a bad dream?" he murmured. "Or are you still in pain?" The next morning, Arya opened her sleepy eyes and stretched luxuriously. "You're awake." It was Lloyd. When did he arrive? Arya greeted him with a smile. When he said he'd just gotten there, a flicker of disappointment crossed her features. Lloyd was so busy. It couldn't have been him all night, could it? But why did he look so exhausted? Upon inquiring, she learned he hadn't slept in 7 days and nights. Before he could continue, the delicious aroma of food wafted in, accompanied by Donna's startled expression. Suddenly remembering something, Arya touched her cheek. Where was her mask? Donna must have been horrified by her face, not wanting to be disliked. She was taken aback when Donna called her a cute little fairy. Was she being mocked? Donna, seeing her distress, kissed her forehead. Only then did Arya believe she wasn't being ridiculed. After catching Lloyd's eye, she shyly looked away. Lloyd, for some reason, scolded Donna for encouraging these strange, bad habits. He glared at Arya, puffed up his cheeks, and demanded, "Did you hear what I said? Are you sure you didn't hear me? Is your hearing as bad as a rabbit's?" Realizing he was in a foul mood, Arya played with her hair and asked, "Are the flowers prettier, or am I?" Lloyd, momentarily speechless, told her to go eat. Then, with a clang, he claimed he was too weak to feed himself. Despite his complaints, he expertly picked up a spoon and prepared to feed her. His tone and actions, mirroring a dream she'd had, made her blush. Donna, never one to miss an opportunity for mischief, urged Lloyd to be gentler. Remembering that Lloyd had probably never fed anyone before, Arya found him endearingly clumsy. She took his hand, guiding the spoon filled with soup to her own lips. "I wish you would feed me like this," she said, beaming. Lloyd froze, then silently withdrew his hand. Nevertheless, he patiently continued feeding her, spoon by spoon, just as she had shown him. Under his care, Arya finally felt fully awake. The thought of visiting Vincent's mother made her instantly nervous. What should I bring her? She wondered aloud. Learning that Vincent's mother loved flowers, she darted to the large tree in the backyard. Being short, she jumped repeatedly, unable to reach a single blossom. Just as she was considering asking for help, Lloyd appeared. With a graceful leap, like an agile cat, he plucked a large flowering branch. Knowing it was Vincent's mother's favorite tree, Arya held out her hand. He placed the blossoms in her palm. Lloyd, misunderstanding her intention, said, "Bringing the whole branch proves the flowers are still alive." Arya simply replied, "The flowers are beautiful." But the moment he turned away, a mischievous glint entered her eyes. Then, while he wasn't looking, she playfully tucked the flowers into his hair. Noticing her little prank, before he could question her, she excused herself, claiming he had dust on him. Lloyd, half believing her, didn't think much of it. Had he never been teased before? He really was an adorably innocent young man. Just then, a muffled snort erupted from the red-haired man standing behind them. Arya recognized him. He was Lloyd's aide and guard, bearing the brunt of the magical mishap. The red-haired man instinctively sought Lloyd's help, but Lloyd simply told him to turn around. And so, the red-haired man trailed behind them, facing backwards, a sight that Arya found utterly amusing. She felt a feather-light touch on the back of her hand, unsure of what he intended. Tentatively, she brushed her hand against his. The moment Lloyd looked at her, their fingers intertwined. They stared at each other, momentarily stunned. Snapping out of it, Lloyd told her to let go, but she only tightened her grip. "Because it's you," Arya explained, "it's okay." Exasperated, Lloyd couldn't argue with her. He could only urge her to hurry. "Mother is waiting," he reminded her. Yet, at the doorway, Arya hesitated. Was she nervous? The girl whose usual boldness could stop a bullet to think she could be shy. Upon entering the room, Arya was immediately captivated by the accessories adorning the walls. Not only did she envision Vincent's mother as a beautiful and imposing figure, but she couldn't help but reveal her admiration. Vincent's mother, pleased, curled her lips into a knowing smile, even teasing that her wooden son had finally blossomed. Before Lloyd could react, she reached out and playfully plucked his bewildered heart. Lloyd, stunned for a moment, finally registered the strange looks everyone was giving him. Yet, despite his annoyance, he couldn't bring himself to scold her. Instead, he glared at the Grand Duke. Caught in the middle, Arya felt like a rabbit, desperately trying to figure out how to mediate. Before, you suspected he was a spy and wanted him killed. Now you want to marry him. Do you think I'll agree? The Grand Duke thundered. Who was it that brought his intended bride back here, only to practically throw her to the dogs? You have no right to object, Lloyd retorted. Watching her husband and son locked in their furious debate, Vincent's mother angrily ordered them both to be silent. While berating their foolishness, she gently called Arya closer. The moment Arya approached, Vincent's mother pulled her into a warm embrace. What did this child do to deserve such treatment? She demanded. Seeing the marks on Arya's neck, her anger intensified. Arya tried to brush it off, saying it was nothing, but Vincent's mother stopped her. Even if you resented them for it, they would deserve it. Don't pay them any attention until those two fools apologize. It wasn't that it truly didn't matter. It was more that Arya didn't fully comprehend the extent of the harm she had suffered. She recalled Lloyd saying something similar, but compared to her past life, these wounds felt insignificant. Yet, tears welled up, unstoppable. Had she frightened them? Arya wanted to apologize, but Vincent's mother held her tighter, ordering the annoying men to leave. Whether out of guilt or concern, Lloyd hesitated to leave. Only when the Grand Duke rose did Lloyd reluctantly follow him out. Vincent's mother, understanding his unspoken plea, told him to scold Lloyd harshly. If shouting isn't enough, use a stick. Don't use your hands. They'll hurt. She reassured him, don't worry. No matter how much you punish them, they won't break. Arya, amused by the image this conjured, tried to stifle her laughter. Vincent's mother, caressing her cheek, encouraged her to laugh freely. But the forced smile Arya managed only startled her. You don't have to please anyone, Vincent's mother soothed. You can even be as willful as my own children. As if struck by a sudden thought, Arya burst into laughter. She nestled into Vincent's mother's embrace. Even if I get angry, it'll be all right, won't it? However, the underlying meaning in her words, a hint of something secret, caused a flicker of panic across Lloyd's face. It seemed Vincent's mother knew something. Meanwhile, the two men who had been ejected glared at each other. Before leaving, Lloyd demanded of the Grand Duke, "What did you do to her? Why did Arya say you were her salvation?" The Grand Duke's reply, meant to be a simple explanation of emotional support, was met with a barrage of cynical assumptions from his son. Upon hearing that Arya couldn't eat solid food, subsisting only on sweets and broth, yet still enduring his foul temper, Lloyd was taken aback. Was Arya only agreeing to marry me out of gratitude? He asked, the thought a painful jab. His father, however, mistook his concern, believing Lloyd was merely interested in Arya's powers. This completely infuriated him. "I care for her," Lloyd snapped. "I would never exploit her. But did you force her? If you dare harm her," he threatened, his voice low and dangerous, "I will take your place." Immediately, the Grand Duke, dumbfounded, watched his son storm off. "He's actually quite endearing when he's angry," he mused. Arya's arrival, however, sparked a new thought, a possibility. But it wasn't the right time yet. "If I didn't think this boy was decent," he muttered, "I wouldn't even consider giving my daughter to him." His butler, standing beside him, pointed out, "Your Grace, you only have a son. No daughter, you say?" The Grand Duke chuckled. Suddenly, news of a visiting cleric reached him. He couldn't help but feel a surge of annoyance. These clerics, the state religion of the empire, even had a say in marriages. God's will, he scoffed internally. The very people who killed me in my past life. What are they doing here? Should I even bother meeting them? No. They aren't even worthy of polishing my shoes. Donna, after placing a kiss on his forehead, departed. Lying in bed, unable to sleep, Arya heard unfamiliar, agitated voices. Who could be arguing at this hour? She wondered. Driven by curiosity, she followed the sound of the disturbance. Just as she reached the door, she heard two voices gossiping. Arya, now going by Barunta, strained to eavesdrop, but their sudden exclamation of "someone's there" nearly made her lose her composure. Clerics, always so dramatic, she thought, hold her breath. They were discussing sending someone here. Barunta didn't want a good student to be corrupted, so they planned to send a boy with an angelic name. Could it be Gabriel? In her past life, he wasn't just the captain of the Holy Knights, but a ruthless killer of thousands. He saw it all as evolution, as God's will. The blood, the screams, still echoed in her memory, but there were many with the same name. Perhaps it wasn't him. However, this boy had no background, his powers unstable, and so these two were using him as a pawn. Barunta realized they were about to leave. Arya quickly found a hiding spot. Hypocritical clerics, she thought, disgusted. Even in the light, they're like maggots in the dark, preying on the weak. She had assumed Barunta was the Empire's enemy, but it seemed they were making deals in secret. And what did they mean by, "There must be darkness for there to be light"? Arya stared at the hand that suddenly appeared, looming large. It was Lloyd. "What are you doing standing in the hallway like that?" he asked. "Marry me." Even though that person had taught her revenge, the very demon who had dragged her into hell. It was only now that she understood. In both this life and the last, he had always loved Lloyd deeply. Arya, already unable to sleep, now found sleep even more elusive. "Let's find someone to sing you a lullaby," Lloyd offered gently. "Or you could sing," Arya suggested playfully, only to be told she was crazy. Realizing his misstep, Lloyd quickly suggested she find Donna. Faced with Arya's persistent teasing, Lloyd sighed in exasperation. He wondered if he'd become so accustomed to her playful jabs that she'd mistaken them for genuine affection. Arya, equally perplexed, wondered why she seemed to run into him everywhere. When Lloyd explained that his office was next door, her surprised expression made him feel utterly foolish. So she really had caught him daydreaming earlier. Feeling a tug on his sleeve, he turned. "What is it?" he asked. When she declared her intention to scold him, he couldn't help but recall his past misdeeds. Bracing himself for a torrent of well-deserved reprimands, he was instead met with a string of playful insults. Idiot, mute, monster. He even found himself laughing at the damned scoundrel jab. He'd taught her that one himself, hadn't he? Were these the insults others had hurled at her? He felt a surge of protectiveness. He should have killed those fools. The realization of how much he cared for her was stark, but she seemed to interpret his concern as annoyance. Even after accepting his proposal, she remained upset. Was it pity? She also mentioned his supposedly short lifespan, not wanting him to suffer after her inevitable passing. "You should just consider it compassion," she thought. "Are you even listening to me?" she demanded. "I said I'll marry you." The soft touch of her fingers on his hand was intoxicating. He couldn't resist gently kneading them. Taking her hand in his, he knelt, offering a sincere apology for his past behavior. He vowed to protect her for the rest of his life, to never allow anyone to belittle or dismiss her again. "This is your home now," he declared. Arya, stunned by his sudden confession, was speechless. Looking at Lloyd, who now called himself her husband, she whispered, "Can I truly be your wife?" "Of course, if you're willing," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. "I'll arrange a grand wedding for you immediately." Arya yearned for the warmth of a home, but feared becoming a burden. Lloyd, however, remained resolute. "You will be my only wife in this life," he vowed, his words like a sacred oath. "I'll make sure everyone knows of your existence. You won't be hidden away like a ghost. Don't worry, Arya," he continued, his voice fierce. "If anyone dares to harm you, I'll kill them, even if it means going to hell myself." "Your Holiness," a voice pleaded, "grant me 5 years. After that, you could do as you please." Due to the pact between the Empire and Barunta, a young cleric had to be offered as a sacrificial pawn. Gabriel, deceived and eager to gain power, volunteered. But in his heart, he harbored a deep resentment towards Barunta, believing they shouldn't even exist. Meanwhile, the head chef, brimming with enthusiasm, cornered Arya. "For the wedding cake, do you prefer durian or pineapple?" he inquired. Upon hearing the suggestion of wasabi, he excitedly rallied the kitchen staff to begin preparations, marveling at their vibrant spirits. Vincent, observing the scene, attributed their hope to the supposed lifting of the curse. This, he believed, was impossible. "Do you know something I don't?" someone asked. "Hardly," Vincent scoffed. "I'm not the heir." Despite his position, he remained convinced that Vincent's mother's recovery had nothing to do with the curse. Barunta's malice still lingered. However, the dismissive retort of "what nonsense" deeply offended Vincent. "Haven't they told you?" Vincent pressed. "Barunta was once favored by the gods. They were granted divine power to destroy a demon," Vincent explained, "but the first head of the Barunta family didn't fulfill their duty. Instead, they sold their soul to the demon. Since then, the Barunta have been branded as demon worshippers, cursed for generations." "That just sounds like a selfish god to me," Arya scoffed. "Too lazy to do the dirty work themselves, they dump it on someone else. Then, once it's done, they swoop in and play the savior, forcing the one who actually did the work to abandon their family and become a slave. And then they send the whole family to hell. What a completely unfair setup." Vincent burst into laughter at her skewed logic, teasing her for blaspheming. "Well, what can I say? I'm a Barunta fan now," Arya retorted with a shrug. "But the Empire truly believes this story. It's not widely known, but the direct Barunta bloodline is believed to carry a malevolent energy. It even affects those around them," Vincent added. "Though I don't see the problem. Having an 8-pack isn't a bad thing, is it?" "Yeah, but you have to keep winning to maintain it. Breaking the curse would be disastrous for the Empire. That's why the Empire sends clerics regularly, to maintain a sort of symbiosis, unless the malice is completely eradicated." "But even the Pope couldn't do it," Vincent finished, shaking his head. "I doubt anyone can. Hey, dummy, look, I've got a fearless sister-in-law who doesn't care about dying. Time for a grand wedding." With that, everyone sprang into action. Vincent's mother even assigned a personal maid to Arya. From her, Arya learned that the Barunta retainers had arrived overnight, scrolls in hand, ready to protest. The maid, however, seemed unconcerned. "Everything will go according to the young master's wishes," she assured Arya. Despite this reassurance, Arya remained uneasy and decided to sneak off to observe the situation herself. Finding a discreet vantage point, she was met with the breathtaking sight of her husband, only to be interrupted by an irritating presence. This person, like a persistent shadow, was constantly analyzing Lloyd's every move and intention. Arya glared at him, but upon hearing his promise not to cause trouble, she reluctantly agreed to his company. At that moment, the handsome and imposing young master declared his choice of bride, only to be met with fierce opposition from his retainers. They argued that the girl's unknown origins made her unsuitable to be the future mistress of Barunta. Arya knew the reason behind their resistance. With Vincent's mother's recovery, they believed the curse was lifted and wanted her gone. clearing the way for their own children to rise in the ranks. Vincent scoffed. They always pull this stunt. His words, however, only fueled Arya's anxiety. Sensing her fear, Vincent quickly reassured her, "Don't worry, sister-in-law. They can't control my brother." True to form, Lloyd, a man of action, drew his sword, forcing them to reconsider their objections. "Think carefully," he challenged. "Does your disapproval truly matter?" With a feigned swing of his blade, he declared, "Since no one has any further objections, the matter is settled." Arya, prepared to unleash her own persuasive arguments, was surprised by Lloyd's swift and decisive action. He had silenced the room with a single, powerful gesture. Currently, only Carlin and Vincent's mother knew her secret. As for Vincent, his interest was purely curiosity, not malice. It seemed she finally had a home, a family. The sudden sound of approaching footsteps broke the moment. "What are you two doing here?" a voice inquired. "Madam, second young master," another voice echoed. "What are you doing here? And why is your sword drawn? Don't you think you're overreacting?" Vincent interjected, intercepting the red-haired aide before he could escalate the situation. "Just pretend you didn't see anything. If my brother hears you almost got killed, my sister-in-law will definitely scold you for not being more flexible." The red-haired aide's bewildered response, "What's flexible?" left both Vincent and Arya momentarily speechless. "Are you an idiot?" Vincent exclaimed, exasperated. "You know this, you know that, but you don't know how to be flexible." He stared at the aide's clear, yet utterly clueless expression. Fuming, Vincent pried the aide's hand off his waist. He had no desire to become as simple-minded as the aide. Their ambiguous, tangled quarrel, a mix of flirtation and frustration, quickly attracted Lloyd's attention. Arya, snapping back to reality, tugged at Lloyd's sleeve. To shake off the clingy aide, Lloyd suggested he stay as Arya's guard. Vincent, feigning hurt, muttered, "Sister-in-law, don't you love me anymore?" Finally, the long-awaited moment arrived. Arya, adorned in a beautiful wedding gown embellished with flowers, blushed as the two exchanged compliments. Lloyd, initially attempting to interject, paused as he heard Luna's sigh. "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. He fell deeply in love the moment he saw you, miss." Luna continued, "So please, love the person you see in the mirror as well." Arya gazed at her reflection, a familiar yet foreign image. Her long lashes, large eyes, and the charming curve of her smile as she looked at Lloyd made her realize something profound. Even if the world pointed fingers and called her ugly, as long as the person she loved cherished her, wasn't that enough? Noticing the shift in Arya's demeanor, Luna couldn't resist rushing forward to express her affection. Lloyd, however, overheard. "If you were my rival in love," he teased, "you'd be lying on the floor right now, pretending to be frightened." The little maid, feigning terror, replied, "It seems the young master's love is no less than mine." Arya gazed at the man who was about to become her husband. His hair was meticulously styled, revealing a beauty mark she'd never noticed before. Lloyd, however, remained silent. Did he not like her dress? Arya's mind raced with anxious thoughts, only to be interrupted as Lloyd swiftly lowered the veil over her face. What was with him? His face was flushed, and he kept fidgeting with his earlobe. Arya recalled Luna's words. "Once you fall in love, the person you love becomes the most beautiful being in the world." What about Lloyd, then? "You're so beautiful," Lloyd murmured. But why wasn't she happy to hear his compliment? Unexpectedly, Lloyd scooped her up as if she were a child and told her to look in the mirror and then decide who was more beautiful. Their sweet interaction brought smiles to the faces of the attending maids. Arya, not wanting to flaunt their affection, struggled to get down, but Lloyd only held her tighter. Cradled in Lloyd's arms, Arya slowly entered the warmly lit wedding chapel. Because she couldn't speak, Lloyd had kept the ceremony simple. This, however, made Arya feel as if he didn't care now that they were married. The way he kept calling her Bunny, was that really how a groom should behave? He slipped the ring on her finger so casually and kept giggling to himself. It definitely wasn't because he was marrying her. Still, the sparkling blue diamond was unlike any ordinary gem. Lloyd told her to close her eyes and silently think the word husband. The word echoed in both their minds. Was this some kind of telepathic magic? "Have you used magic before?" Lloyd asked, surprised. "You picked it up so quickly. Are you naturally gifted?" Fortunately, he was surrounded by talented individuals and didn't suspect anything. This must have cost a fortune, Arya thought. Even though they could now communicate telepathically, if she lost her notepad, how would she talk to anyone else? "I'm enough," Lloyd declared. "Why bother with anyone else?" the budding argument was cut short by the officiant's announcement. Begin. Their ceremonial kiss instantly dispelled any lingering animosity. Lloyd, however, playfully demanded she repeat what she just thought. The officiant, coughing to hide his embarrassment, suggested they skip that part. But I really wanted to see it, he thought wistfully. And so, amidst applause and blessings, the wedding concluded. Arya, however, felt none of the joy a bride should. Hearing Lloyd call her Bunny yet again, his familiar gesture, the way he held her, was just like the demon duke in her past life. The moment he pulled her out of that hell, she made a silent vow. If there's a next life, she would be the one to protect him. For the next 10 years, she thought, we are husband and wife, friends, and each other's most cherished lovers. I will spend my entire life protecting you, Lloyd, and I will also diligently protect every single one of Lloyd's fans. A strange, fourth-wall-breaking thought flickered through her mind. I wish you all happiness every day. Shall we sleep together? She blurted out, the thought slipping out unintentionally. Lloyd, sighing dramatically, replied, as if I'd eat you alive. He, the one relegated to the sofa, considered taking a cold shower. He told her to go to sleep if she was tired. Arya, left alone and technically a newlywed bride, wasn't angry. Instead, her resolve to ensure his happiness only deepened. Arya, drifting off to sleep, was jolted awake by the sharp sound of nails scraping against the chalkboard. It was Lloyd. He was clutching the sofa, coughing up blood. Gasping, he fought to suppress the agonizing pain, but he still frightened Arya. Lloyd assured her he wasn't terminally ill. It was his family's curse. Generation after generation, they atoned for sins they hadn't committed. Are you scared? He asked. You can still leave now. Instead of leaving, Arya rushed forward and embraced him tightly. Feeling his warmth against her neck, she couldn't bring herself to pull away. Lloyd gently comforted her, but then abruptly pushed her away. Her bewildered expression mirrored his own. He thought he heard her call his name. Cautiously, Arya nestled back into his arms, begging him not to reject her. Ignoring the potential backlash, she began to sing the song of life. Lloyd told her to stop, but she didn't respond. He had to physically pry her away and forcefully tell her to cease. He remembered Vincent's warning about her addiction to the song. While he'd never considered exploiting it, the thought of her deception stung. He grabbed her hand and demanded, "Who are you really?" No longer hiding, Arya revealed she was a siren. Her inability to speak was due to a potion her mother had given her. They talked, a flurry of questions and answers. Lloyd, worried about the potion's effects on her health, confirmed that she had indeed saved his mother. However, his repeated insistence that he hadn't done anything wrong aroused her suspicion. Why would he say that? She wondered. Does he know something? Suddenly, Arya transformed into a whimpering mess, claiming she'd had a nightmare and needed to hold hands to sleep. He knew she was being manipulative, but when she described being eaten by a giant ant, Lloyd, stifling a laugh, reminded himself that wives needed pampering. He took her hand, lay down facing her, and held her close. Arya expressed regret over the ruined ring ceremony. "Don't worry," Lloyd reassured her. "If you ever need me, I'll be there in an instant." To make amends for her deception, Arya gave him a mermaid's tear. It represented not only a siren's loyalty, but also her love for his righteousness. She trusted that Lloyd would never be like her father. Their conversation then drifted to the topic of fortune tellers. His tone dripped with disdain for such people. It seemed she'd have to keep her distance from a certain someone. Little did she know that someone was the very boy she'd once beaten half to death. Arya, enjoying the beautiful flowers with Luna, heard a rustling in the bushes. A young man emerged, and he looked familiar. It was him, the boy from the exiled lands. Seeing him seemingly harassing Arya, Luna, blushing furiously, shielded her and scolded him. "A prospective cleric, acting so rudely," she exclaimed. Even after learning that Arya was the young mistress, he didn't relent. This completely infuriated Luna. She thought this boy was incredibly audacious, using such an old-fashioned pickup line. To avoid further misunderstanding, Arya said he had the wrong person. However, even when Luna was practically frothing at the mouth, he didn't back down. He even apologized for not being able to protect the girl he thought was Arya. The young man was Gabriel, the cleric sent by the Empire. The same name? But that Gabriel hadn't realized his victory until much later. His sky blue eyes now had a golden rim. Without a doubt, this was the saintess's loyal dog, the very same god of slaughter from her past life. Now, there was no resentment between them, nor any connection. Wait a minute, just in case, perhaps she could try to win him over. Arya slipped him a note. then promptly pulled Luna away. 5 years was plenty of time. No matter what, this person had to be on her side. Arya, praying devoutly, finally had some alone time with Gabriel. Before he could even ask a question, he was bombarded with compliments, being called Your Angelic Highness and praised as a shining Ultraman. Flushed from the flattery, the gentle young man was still curious about how she had brought him to the papal court. Seeing he wasn't easily fooled, Arya whistled. Suddenly, a large dog bounded towards them. He expected the dog to attack her, but instead, it obediently let her pet it. A black panther followed, along with countless white doves. Faced with the girl, surrounded by these creatures, Gabriel realized how foolish he had been. Noticing his dejection, Arya told him not to doubt himself. However, the saintess had once said those same words to him. Was it a coincidence? Or was there something he didn't know? Despite being a powerful siren, she lived like a dog at home. Yet, here in the demon castle, she was pampered like a true princess. Arya was happy every day here. Everyone would constantly play rock, paper, scissors to get her cards. Every time this happened, Donna would scold and thrash them. The red-haired guard suffered the most. The guard corps resented this transfer student and would gang up on him under the guise of training. However, he'd single-handedly take on 20 of them, sending them straight to the ICU. Arya didn't understand why everyone liked her cards. Lloyd, trying to say it was because she was cute, instead brought up the supposed flirting between her and the cleric. The thought of his wife running off with someone else made him want to kill the guy. Arya, realizing his misunderstanding, explained that Gabriel was definitely not on her side. She was only being friendly with him so he could better assist Lloyd. Her explanation made him aware of his own frightening possessiveness. Was this love? And when had it started? Regardless, he didn't want anyone near his wife. One day, Arya went to see the Duke, but all she could think about were his cards. It seemed the Duke had liked her from the very beginning. However, his dark circles like a panda's suggested he hadn't slept well, but he was only 30. He claimed he was too old to sleep. The next day, a rumbling sound echoed from the square. Suspecting an earthquake, Luna shielded Arya. The red-haired guard rushed in, threw open the window, and looked out. The Duke, at the center of the commotion, seemed to have lost control. Before they could process what the guard was saying, they saw 3 other people in the square. Lloyd, with no chance of winning, tried to stop the Duke head-on. However, the disparity in their strength quickly led to him being pinned down by the Duke, who was radiating malevolence. Just then, Arya walked towards the Duke. Before anyone could stop her, Arya balled her fists and started pummeling the Duke. The jarring scene left everyone stunned. The Duke, coming to his senses, rubbed his head, confused as to why his wife was glaring at him. "It's dangerous out here. Why did you come out?" He then scooped Arya into his arms, flaunting their affection, much to Lloyd's seething frustration. Arya, using her song to heal the Duke, asked, "What did you mean by the time has come? For the next 5 years, I will formally inherit the family curse. My father, gradually losing his power, will die. As for me, I'll have occasional episodes and become stronger. If there's no successor, the roaming malice will destroy everything. So Lloyd, perpetually single in both this life and the last, do you want to destroy it all?" Arya touched her earlobe. "It looks good on you. Isn't this the token you told me to always wear?" "Yes, and it also represents that I will never betray you. So, do you want to end this?" "Well, if I said I did, then do what you must. I'll go to hell with you." Lloyd didn't want to destroy everything. He only hoped this curse would end with him. Arya leaned against his shoulder, murmuring, "I'll help you." Arya needs everyone's help too. Those who can't wait can go here. Yes, that's right, this one. Then click the magnifying glass and type Demon's Promise. Don't make any typos. Then click the one that pops up. That's it. Thank you for your support. Love you guys. In order to sleep, I chug 999 bottles of energy drinks every day. Unable to bear seeing him wither away, Arya went to visit him. Seeing his daughter staring at the empty bottles, he explained that he felt bad for a while after drinking them, but felt bad all day if he didn't. His unconcealed exhaustion, was it because of his fading power? Learning that the Duke hadn't slept in half a month and would even become delirious from exhaustion. He wanted to tell his daughter a secret. He could hear her singing no matter where he was, especially when filled with malice. Arya nearly dropped a bottle in fright. Could it be that her father had already discovered her secret? Arya believed the 3 of them wouldn't tell. However, his eyes also fading to gray, and the fact he could hear her singing at any time. Could he be connected to the demon somehow? Even though the Duke needed her more than anyone, he hadn't exposed her. It was as if he had given up all hope. Arya, resolute, declared, "My song can reach anywhere, even hell. So please, entrust the darkness that plagues you to me." The Duke's room, unguarded, allowed her to slip in easily. That he had lasted this long without sleep was a miracle in itself. Arya smoothed his furrowed brow and softly hummed a lullaby, which unexpectedly made him chuckle. She glared at him. "Stop laughing." The demon, stifling his laughter, had never heard anyone say he looked like an angel while sleeping. Arya, wanting to smack him, told him to lie down. Hoping to conserve her energy, she'd inadvertently energized him instead. The Duke's incessant chatter made Arya want to leave, but he clutched her sleeve, whining that he had just fallen asleep. This shameless, faced with his unreasonable song requests, Arya told him he wasn't allowed to laugh anymore. He braced himself, determined not to laugh, and filled his dream with squirrels, foxes, and stars. He even pictured Arya patting him like a baby. Finally, the near-delirious Duke closed his eyes and drifted off. Arya tiptoed away, hoping he'd have sweet dreams. The Duke, in a burst of fatherly affection, tossed something at her, not a firecracker, but the key to a massive villa. He declared it her wedding gift. He chuckled at her stunned expression. She looked happier than if he'd given her a plane or a tank. When she expressed a desire to see it, he scooped her up without hesitation. His mood, and even his complexion, had improved considerably. But remembering the Duke's eccentric tastes, Arya hesitated at the door, her hand trembling, bracing herself for the worst. She was met with a surprisingly elegant and beautiful room. She couldn't believe the Duke had chosen this. Her mother must have had a hand in it. But what about the bubbling rabbit on the bed? Could it be him? But wasn't he on bad terms with his father? Moments later, Arya, clutching the rabbit, stared intently at Lloyd until he blushed crimson. He finally asked, smugly, "Do you have something to say?" The bashful young man refused to admit anything, but when Arya stroked his head, he instinctively leaned into her touch. "Is this guy crazy?" she thought. When had he become so docile? Lloyd, flustered, gestured toward some envelopes. They were invitations. Everyone was curious about the young mistress of Baruntha. Rumors swirled that the young master had defied imperial authority for her, both to protect her and to conceal his siren identity. Lloyd had selected a few suitable families to represent his new identity. Thatched Arya, worried about causing trouble for Baruntha, but Lloyd dismissed her concerns, calling it their honor. He picked up an invitation from the depraved Count's family, known for adopting orphans. In her past life, this man had sold Lloyd multiple times, even going so far as to fake his death, and disfiguring countless adopted children to use as stand-ins, all to present Lloyd to the Emperor. The Count had also been the Pope's justification for war. Lost in painful memories, Arya was jolted back to reality by Lloyd shaking her. He didn't understand her sudden fear. Had this man done something to her in the past? Arya, barely containing her anger, didn't understand why she was being treated this way. "I want to be selfish. I have dreams. I have things I want to do. I like to draw. I want to learn swordsmanship. I like horseback riding. I want to experience the feeling of breathing freely. I can teach you swordsmanship, but you'll need a teacher for drawing." Lloyd snatched the offending invitation and twirled a strand of her hair, telling her not to give up on the things she loved. "If anyone tries to take them away, even if you have to kill them, take it back." Staring at the invitations, he suddenly suggested a trip to the Rainbow Fields, worried about her frail health and not wanting to go. Arya pouted. Was this a side effect of her shortened lifespan? But it wasn't his fault. "Maybe walking with you will make me stronger." Unable to bear her sadness, Lloyd told her to put down the invitations and pulled her into a hug. Did she not have legs? Her racing heartbeat and warmth against him were almost overwhelming. They stepped into the flower-filled courtyard. Expecting darkness, Arya was surprised to find the garden illuminated by embedded magic crystals. Setting her gently down, Lloyd said, "From here, you can see the entire back garden, but the breathtaking view couldn't compare to Lloyd's radiance." I want to join the Angelo family, but their head is incredibly stubborn. Even if you poked him with needles, he wouldn't yield. Arya, curious, asked, but how does my wife, an unfavored countess's daughter, know so much about every faction? Why not choose a better family? Well, Lloyd stammered. That family sent me an invitation. There's definitely something fishy about it. It's getting cold. Let's go back inside. Suddenly, he felt a tug on his sleeve and found his palm filled with sparkling magic crystals. Why are you giving me these? He asked. Because they remind me of you, Arya replied. They may be common stones, but they're from you. Besides, she added, if we don't go back soon, someone might get sick again. The next day, Luna, pushing a food cart, excitedly presented her homemade mustard-flavored cake. However, Arya seemed distracted, but her expression changed when she heard that the depraved count had been killed. Luna, about to elaborate, was interrupted by Lloyd. You don't want to hide this from Arya, but she's so young. What if she's frightened? After all, he continued, that family used charity as a front to experiment on children and even sell them to the imperial court for amusement. Is this a coincidence? Arya asked. Or did you intentionally leak this information? Lloyd denied it, presenting her with an official document. He told her to read it carefully before signing. He had used the depraved count to gain someone's trust and obtained this adoption application. Arya observed Lloyd, the usually aloof young master, now intently watching her every move, even noticing the slightest differences in her handwriting. The man was terrifyingly perceptive. Even though we couldn't choose a good family, Lloyd said, I took care of someone who made you uncomfortable. Arya spent her days either with Lloyd's mother or putting the Duke to sleep. Lloyd, feeling neglected, tried to win back his wife's attention, but Arya mistakenly thought he was monopolizing his parents. This upset him. He mentioned wanting to spend time with her too, but suggested visiting her room at night. Arya, misinterpreting his intentions, worried about what he might discover. Lloyd only sees you as a sister, Luna reassured her. He wouldn't have any other ideas. This, however, only made Arya feel worse. Wanting to grow up faster also meant her death would come sooner. Her situation was truly difficult. Worried about Lloyd's affections shifting, Arya made a long-distance call, only to be hung up on. That rotten scoundrel shouldn't even be alive, she fumed. Faced with this goddess's advances, he should be on his knees begging for forgiveness. But why did she feel uneasy? Overhearing a conversation about the depraved count's misdeeds, a calculating glint entered her eyes. She inquired about the orphan children, feigning concern and expressing a desire to help them personally. Meanwhile, at the church, Arya waited, staring at the necklace she had found. Suddenly, the door burst open with a bang. Gabriel, breathless, apologized for his lateness. Arya shook her head dismissively. She showed him a necklace and asked for his help. With a warm breath, unlike the demonic and magical energy before, the necklace, now imbued with divine power, glowed brightly. Startled, Gabriel dropped it, exclaiming, "This thing tried to suck me in." Although the necklace appeared unchanged, having been worn by a saintess, it was clearly no ordinary trinket. When Gabriel questioned her about it, Arya simply claimed it was a gift from a wizard. A wizard, knowing it was a target of the Empire? Gabriel chose to ignore this. He was sent to purify malice. But Gabriel was acutely aware of his own limitations. He was filled with self-reproach for not being able to help Arya more. She took his hand and reassured him. "It's all right. Will you keep this a secret for me?" she asked, petals drifting down like her dreams. Arya tightened her grip on the reins. She was finally experiencing the feeling of freedom. Lloyd's mother had told her he felt the same. Suddenly, however, someone tugged at her skirt. "I promised I'd let you see me," the voice said. Pulled into a tight embrace, Arya wanted to say, "My waist is about to snap." "Don't you think I'm handsome?" the voice asked. "Why don't you learn swordsmanship from me?" Arya nodded without hesitation, which annoyed Lloyd. "Am I not teaching you well enough?" he demanded. Guessing that Lloyd was upset because she was spending time with his mother, Arya said, "I shouldn't be practicing swordsmanship in your mother's arms. But it's the only way to get him into the right posture," she explained. She didn't realize Lloyd was simply frustrated that he couldn't fulfill her wish. But wasn't her true wish him? "And you kissed him?" Lloyd asked. "Just on the cheek," Arya replied. "But my first kiss was with you." "I know," Lloyd said. "You don't have to keep bringing it up." "Your hair seems longer," Arya observed. "But you're still handsome. I really like it." Arya, convinced she could do anything, ended up painting herself like soot. And yet, the shameless artist praised her. Vincent, arriving at that moment, was full of mockery. "Don't be sad," he told her. "Not everyone is as talented as I am." Not wanting to hear his nonsense, Arya beckoned. That old man wants to argue with Donna. Take him away. Ignoring Vincent's protests, Lloyd shoved him onto a chair. Listening to their bickering and Luna's yearning to go out, Lloyd decided against painting. Let's all go out and have some fun, he suggested. That evening, at the bustling market, the sizzling skewers were a delightful treat for the little fairy who had grown up on dew. This is amazing, Arya exclaimed, enjoying the lively atmosphere. I wish Lloyd were here too. I heard that couples who kiss under the fireworks will be together forever. Oh, but you're already taken, someone teased. Don't jinx yourself, Arya retorted. Perhaps guessing who Arya was thinking of, Vincent suggested, why don't you kiss me? I want to be with you too. Catching Arya's glance, Lloyd offered, how about me? Outside the snow-covered church stood a young man. Have you been waiting long? Arya asked. It's all right if it's cold, Gabriel replied. This is a joyous day. It's to commemorate the birth of the demigod's son. Gabriel then pulled out a new bag. It's customary to give gifts on this day, he explained, to those you're grateful for. The young man's sincerity made Arya hesitate. Wait a moment, she told him. She returned shortly with a cake. Her hand paused as she placed the candles. I suppose God doesn't care about age, she mused, causing Gabriel to chuckle. It's the thought that counts, Gabriel reassured her. Arya then remembered Lloyd's approaching birthday. Should I bake him a cake? She wondered. The head chef told her the young master doesn't like celebrating his birthday. But why did he celebrate it for me then? Arya wondered. Arya persisted with her plan, but the result shocked everyone. This toxic bioweapon, someone exclaimed, is practically trying to send the young master to his grave. After 81 attempts, Arya finally emerged, cake in hand. With a few minutes left until midnight, she crouched by the door to light the candles. But Lloyd, just stepping out, caught her in the act. Are you playing with fire? He asked. Arya held up the cake she had prepared. Happy birthday, she chirped. Lloyd, having completely forgotten his own birthday, admitted, I can't seem to feel happy about it. It's okay, Arya reassured him. I'll do my best to make you feel happy. Meanwhile, for 3 years, a lovesick woman had been glued to her phone, constantly lamenting. Why won't he answer? Why? Has some vixen ensnared him? She fretted. That shameless dog. I shouldn't have sent him to Baruntha in the first place. What am I going to do? I can't live without him. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It's natural for feelings to fade with time, but he must not lose her. In that case, I'll show you who's really in charge. A series of bangs echoed, followed by the sight of a blood-stained chalice and a saint, covered in wounds, slumped on the floor. Frantic cries immediately erupted from within. Elsewhere, Arya, clutching a book, couldn't help but steal glances at Lloyd. He looks so handsome when he's focused, she thought. She remembered how he used to bristle when she called him a child. Now, not only did he not react, he even admitted to it. He's not cute at all anymore, she mused. Still, she could only look at him surreptitiously. Whenever their eyes met, her heart would race. It was mortifying. Suddenly, Lloyd's words caught her attention. That's odd, he said. The price of magic stones is skyrocketing. They speculated about the reason, attributing it to supply and demand. After all, magic stones were a mineral unique to Baruntha with a specific annual yield. It's likely embezzlement by someone on the inside, Lloyd concluded. Arya thought about the Baruntha incident, still 2 years away. Although Lloyd's eyes were still black, the continuous inheritance of malice was gradually weakening the purifying effect of his singing. Lloyd's mother had been on the brink of death from malice contamination, but his song had saved her. Perhaps there were other secrets he didn't know. Do you think there are other Sarens? Arya asked. If you want to find them, I can try, Lloyd replied. He pulled out a random flight route document. The plan was somewhat frivolous, even relying a bit on luck. However, it mentioned Atlantis, a place her mother had spoken of the homeland of the Sarens. Arya hoped that finding someone from there might reveal some answers. However, when a man claimed to be a descendant of Atlantis, she couldn't resist the urge to have him thrown out. Get him out of here, she ordered the guards. In his desperation, the man offered her a piece of junk, claiming it was a generations-old family heirloom. Legend says that carrying this will lead you to the entrance of Atlantis, he explained. Then why haven't you opened it in all these years? Arya questioned. Poverty, he replied, and I'm not really interested in it. Curious, Arya asked to see it. The moment she touched the junk, it emitted a powerful glow. Before his incredulous eyes, It transformed into a large, lustrous pink pearl. A pearl this size, Arya thought, could buy a whole city. Even more surprising, the man promptly knelt before her, addressing her as Your Majesty. Meanwhile, Lloyd, patiently waiting while Arya shopped, suddenly smiled indulgently. "Has my queen arrived?" he murmured. Arya expertly tended to Lloyd's wounds, her heart aching with each familiar scar. Faced with his wife's sudden tears, Lloyd patiently soothed her, gently wiping away the tears from the corners of her eyes. In these moments, Arya was like a frightened rabbit, worried he might misunderstand. She waved her hands, explaining that she didn't dislike him or find him unimportant. Lloyd reassured her, telling her not to be afraid and that he wouldn't do anything rash. This, however, only made Arya more sullen. But aren't they supposed to be weak-willed? She thought. Remembering their first encounter in her past life, she recalled him telling her to keep singing, even as he killed. Clearly, she had been captivated by his singing. Now, neither Lloyd nor his father seemed addicted or driven mad. While this was a good thing, Lloyd was concerned by Arya's furrowed brow. Could she be ill? He wondered, reaching out to cup her face in his hands, their foreheads touching. Despite feeling fine, Arya's face flushed crimson. Lloyd's solicitous tone made it clear he saw her as a child. No, 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 Arya thought, yearning for proper embrace, a kiss, anything more. She felt utterly cheated. Meanwhile, the saint paced the vast papal hall. He stopped when he heard someone call his name. A man, his face contorted with rage, caught up to him. "Was it you?" the man demanded. "I want to know if you did it." He brushed aside the saint's conciliatory gesture. "Why did you lie?" he accused. "Why did you spread rumors about me abusing you?" The man's incessant ranting irritated the saint. "Are you bullying me because my divine power is weak?" he retorted. This only enraged the man further. "Your eyes, your mannerisms," he seethed, "they're unsettling, like a rabid dog staring me down." The saint felt a chill and the urge to flee. "Someone like you should be expelled from the papal court," he muttered, turning to leave. Suddenly, he felt a forceful shove from behind. He tumbled down the stairs like a rag doll. Even with strong divine power, the man thought a fall from this height still needs to be checked. Suddenly, the man was seized by a violent coughing fit, spraying the saint with blood. He inadvertently tasted the blood on his lips. His divine power surged. He had stumbled upon a remarkable secret. He simply smiled, suppressing his burgeoning greed. It wasn't the right time. The missing blood couldn't be connected to his increased divine power. Not yet. The Duke, who had ordered Vincent's confinement, now leisurely sipped a glass of 82 Lafite. Arya, curious about his composure, was met with a teasing remark. "Are you disappointed I haven't gone mad?" he asked. "Thanks to my daughter's singing," he explained, "Vincent and I have researched extensively. There are no records of singing driving anyone insane. Was the previous emperor, who became a tyrant, merely a scapegoat? Was the war intentionally instigated?" Arya pondered this. Could the saint, revered as a hero, be responsible? Bellany had always believed herself to be a harbinger of misfortune. What if this was all a carefully orchestrated scheme? But divine power didn't cause madness. He suspected a connection between the Empire and demons. What about me and the angels, he mused. Could this all be someone's doing? To confirm her suspicions, Arya ignored her maid's protests, promising to return quickly. Despite the downpour, she felt a desperate need to find Gabriel. To protect Lloyd, she had to know the truth. She found Gabriel practicing his swordsmanship in the rain. Startled by her presence, he accidentally nicked himself with his sword. He clutched the wound, wincing, too preoccupied to berate himself for the clumsy mistake. Then, he felt Arya's gentle touch. She examined the cut, unconcerned, not noticing the gemstone on her hand stained with his blood. Gabriel apologized profusely. As he reached to wipe the blood away, the gemstone absorbed a significant amount of his blood and energy. Someone with weaker divine power would have perished instantly. He was even more surprised when Arya looked down, her eyes glowing gold. Could the absorbed divine power be used directly by the wearer? This sparked a dangerous thought in someone's mind. Arya handed him a dry towel, finally taking the time to properly observe how much Gabriel had grown. "My lady," Gabriel began, "I have a request. Could you give me that gemstone?" Looking at the inquiry written on a small piece of paper he held, he explained, "There's someone very important to me who often suffers from a lack of power. Aria frowned. They're in pain because they can't help more people, she asked. Are you sure you want to give something life-threatening to someone you cherish? I'm not certain, Gabriel admitted. But if enough divine power is infused, what if it only takes one person to be drained to satisfy it? Gabriel, momentarily speechless, quickly apologized for his selfish thoughts. Perhaps giving it to them would only lead to disappointment, he murmured. Unbeknownst to him, Arya recalled the saint in her past life. She remembered him carrying blood imbued with holy power every day. Where did it come from? Suddenly, she remembered the shocking case of the murdered priest that had rocked the empire. Several, sometimes dozens, within a single year. Not only was their blood and energy drained, but the blame was shamelessly placed on the Duke of Baruntha. Everyone was so busy searching for evidence. They overlooked the saint's rapidly increasing divine power. My dear viewers, Arya thought, her mind drifting. Demon's Contract is nearing its climax. Those who want to read ahead can go here, type in Demon's Contract, and click this link. Make sure you don't misspell it. The one that pops up is the right one. It's important that you search for Demon's Contract, as it motivates the author to keep updating. Snapping back to the present, she asked, "Would you kill for the saint?" Gabriel frowned deeply at her words. "Please don't insult his holiness," he pleaded. "Let me rephrase," Arya said. "Would you betray your own beliefs for him?" "You've forgotten what I told you," Gabriel replied. "Don't doubt the path you've chosen." He continued to bandage her wound. "I hope you won't tell anyone," he added, "especially the saint." This instantly angered Gabriel. "My lady, please don't speak ill of his holiness," he insisted. The man's blind devotion spurred Arya on. "The saint is human, not a god," she pointed out. "He's capable of resorting to anything for his own desires." She knew this might offend Gabriel, even disappoint him, but she needed to plant a seed of doubt, no matter the cost. That night, Arya dreamt she was falling into the ocean. Gurgle, gurgle. Is this a dream? She wondered. She seemed to be able to breathe underwater. She poked at a fish swimming towards her, surprised by the slippery sensation. How could a dream feel so real? Arya ventured deeper, only to be stunned by what she saw. A magnificent structure. Could it be Atlantis? She swam inside effortlessly. Suddenly, a glittering object caught her eye. It was protected by magic. The moment she took the box, the ground began to tremble violently. Realizing the structure was collapsing, she knew she had to leave immediately. But a falling pillar struck her. With a gasp, Arya bolted upright in bed, breathing heavily. The stinging pain in her shoulder told her it was no dream. More importantly, she had the box. Could it be because of the pink pearl? But first, she needed to tend to her shoulder. Carlin couldn't heal. Calling a medic would alert Lloyd. She didn't want him to worry. Then she remembered something. Arya reached for the shimmering necklace. Putting it on, she focused on healing herself. The pain in her shoulder quickly subsided. To be sure, she threw a few punches. The necklace, its energy depleted, returned to its original color. She couldn't believe how simple it was to use divine power. Sarens needed musical talent and control over their voices. Magic required incantations from mages. Witchcraft demanded etched wrinkles from witches. Only divine power didn't seem naturally generated. It was more like energy deliberately contained within a vessel. Even an ordinary person could wield it freely. It was all a giant enigma. Unable to figure out, Arya gave up for the moment. She held the box, but couldn't open it. She waited until dawn. Sister-in-law, Vincent piped up, "I have a question that's been bugging me for 4 years. Why do you call that Star Angel? Am I not blonde enough? Blue-eyed enough? Handsome enough?" Vincent stared intently at Arya, clearly fishing for a compliment. Arya, unable to stand his preening, urged him to hurry up with the box. Forced into a makeshift spa treatment, the box slowly spit out a slip of paper. It was a clue to unlock the code. But no matter how she combined the characters, she couldn't form a complete word. Suspecting it was from an extinct ancient civilization, Vincent declared that they just needed to find its origin. "It's an Atlantean artifact from 1,500 years ago," he announced. Startled, Vincent asked Arya where she got it. "Oh," she replied vaguely. "I picked it up in the deep sea." Seeing his continued curiosity, she added, "It doesn't matter. Will you keep his secret?" "Of course," Vincent exclaimed. "This is one of my few hobbies." Arya went to the prayer room. where she unexpectedly found a distraught Gabriel. "You look unwell," she observed. "Has something happened?" Gabriel stammered, looking down. He admitted he had placed the saint on too high a pedestal. "The saint," he explained, "although he hasn't revealed the gemstone necklace, mentioned a way to increase divine power." He continued, "Knowing how he is, he kept pressing me, even urging me, making it difficult to refuse." Realizing what was happening, Arya warned, "The saint might come looking for you soon. He wouldn't miss a chance to become stronger," she added. Just then, she recalled Lloyd's earlier question. Meanwhile, the oblivious Gabriel continued to make excuses for the saint. Before Arya could stop him, she heard Lloyd's voice telling Gabriel to wait right there. With a click, Lloyd appeared, his usually impassive face etched with anger. The situation was awkward, as if he'd been caught in an affair. Lloyd was seething. "You should have killed this guy a long time ago," he thought. Noticing Gabriel's unconscious staring at Arya, Lloyd warned, "Look at her again, and I'll gouge your eyes out." Arya, thinking quickly, decided to tell Lloyd about the necklace. But Gabriel interrupted. "Didn't we agree," he blurted, "that this would be our secret?" "You idiot," Arya thought. "Are you sure you want to say that now?" Sure enough, the next second, the sickening crunch of breaking bones filled the air. Although she knew Gabriel could heal, Arya still felt a pang of sympathy. Lloyd turned to Arya. "What secret?" he demanded. "He's not my husband," Arya improvised. "Let me explain. If she told Lloyd the truth, Gabriel would surely find out. He has someone he cares deeply about," she lied, "and he's afraid revealing the secret will harm them. That's why he stopped me." Lloyd covered his face with his hand. This little idiot would believe anything. Unable to bear Gabriel's lingering gaze on Arya any longer, Lloyd gently took her hand and led her away. Someone he cares deeply about, he thought. Just like me back then. It was just an excuse to deny the true feelings in his heart. Taking over the family business, Lloyd not only had to be wary of the Emperor, but also deal with retaliation from rival factions. The Emperor, envious of Baruntha's wealth, went so far as to accuse Lloyd of embezzlement, forcing him to appear before the court. Seeing Arya's worry, Lloyd reassured her, "It's fine. They wouldn't dare touch me." But Arya knew better. The Emperor wasn't afraid of Baruntha. He was afraid of the destructive malice residing within Lloyd. But even so, still worried, Arya wanted to accompany Lloyd to court. Facing his wife's determined gaze, Lloyd felt a pang of shintung, excientung, a complex mix of heartache and protectiveness. The thought of Arya suffering any indignity made him want to obliterate everyone involved. Arya, momentarily stunned, naively assumed Lloyd simply didn't like being watched. "It's okay," she reassured him. "Don't you still have your, well, nominal father?" The next day, the two boarded a carriage for the Angelo family estate. However, when they disembarked, they inexplicably had a Vincent in tow. Shameless as ever, he claimed he was there to look at books. As the three bickered, a white-haired butler arrived to greet them. The interior of the estate was surprisingly austere, devoid of any ornamentation. It seemed the rumors were true. The Angelos donated all their income to the poor. Before Vincent could utter a word, Arya stomped hard on his foot. She knew he wouldn't be able to resist, making some inappropriate comment. Overhearing Vincent's muttered desire to peruse the library, the butler promised to make arrangements later. He then turned and continued to lead them through the estate. Hearing a door open, a man immediately stood up. "Greetings," he said. "I am Martel, head of the Angelo family. This is my younger son, Lute. As for my elder son, he had some business to attend to." His blunt delivery made Arya wonder if this was why someone had once held a knife to his throat. The ensuing silence was thick with awkwardness. Everyone stared blankly at each other, the tension almost suffocating. Finally, Martel spoke again, but his words shocked both Lloyd and Arya. "Water Rat is still alive," he declared. Lloyd immediately denied it. "I led the team that cornered him," he insisted. "I personally confirmed his death. We checked the body multiple times. But we've seen someone who looks exactly like him," Martel countered. "You must be mistaken." Martel refused to back down. "There are signs of Water Rat's activity in the area," he insisted. Arya racked her brain, trying to understand where things had gone wrong. Water Rat had a disloyal mage underling. To permanently eliminate Water Rat, she had brainwashed the mage into killing him. But if he's still alive, she mused, could he have been unaffected by the song? Meanwhile, Martel, who had been investigating Water Rat's movements, had discovered a large number of desiccated corpses resembling skeletons in a nearby village. They showed signs of having their energy drained. Was he conducting experiments? Martel wondered aloud. Lloyd, his brow furrowed in concern, knew exactly what kind of brutal retaliation they could expect. Hans clutched his head in regret. For years ago, he had accepted an assassination contract, easily infiltrating Baruntha. He quickly located the young mistress, who was known for her affinity with animals. He had assumed she was mute. He never expected that not only could she speak, but she could also sing. Hans had created a chimeric serpent laced with deadly poison. Since it wasn't a true living creature, he hadn't worried about the mission failing. However, when he regained consciousness, he discovered he had led his team to slaughter water rats' entire hideout. Even his own master was dead. Uneasy, Hans tried to confirm Water Rat's death, but the dying sorcerer threatened to transform him into a chimeric being. This required a tremendous amount of energy in a living body. To achieve this, the two of them slaughtered an entire village. Although Water Rat survived, he needed to constantly change bodies, and they had to be handsome. Exasperated, Hans urged him to leave, promising to find him a beautiful new body later. Meanwhile, Luna gasped dramatically. "My lady," she exclaimed, "you look absolutely stunning." But Arya, preoccupied, was still fretting about her appearance for that evening's banquet. Arya was wondering if the old maid, a nickname she'd given a certain gossipy noblewoman, would attend when she saw Lloyd already inside, knocking playfully on her door. Looking at his wife walking towards him, Lloyd asked curiously, "Why are you wearing all white?" "Because I want to be an angel," Arya teased. "After all, my husband is even more angelic than an angel." No, no, no," she added, flustered. "That's ridiculous. It's enough to kill me." Lloyd, stepping into the banquet hall, kept his eyes fixed on Arya. His presence caused the crowd to part, leaving a wide space around them. Arya had been worried about being swarmed, but now no one dared even look at them. Even Lute, trailing behind them, couldn't help but marvel at the effect. Arya, having specifically chosen a stunning gown, had hoped her brother would be the star of the evening. But with Lloyd radiating such an intimidating aura, no one dared approach, not even to ask for a dance. Lloyd, curious about their conversation, overheard Lute suggest they go dance. Arya froze, startled by the suggestion. Lloyd stammered, explaining he hadn't realized Arya, so graceful and elegant, didn't know how to dance. He'd naturally assumed she was proficient in everything. "Well then," he said, "let me teach you." Aside from swordsmanship, this was something he could finally do for her. He remembered their pleasant conversation earlier, surprised that his offhand comment about dancing had stayed with her. Just as Arya was about to take his hand, the announcement of the Emperor's arrival made her recoil. She inwardly cursed the Emperor's untimely appearance. As she prepared to bow with the rest of the court, she noticed Lloyd was focused solely on her, still reaching for her hand. She had expected to feel fear upon seeing the Emperor, the man who had tormented her in the past. But Lloyd's imposing presence filled her with a sense of security. And so, they began to dance in the center of the hall, while the Emperor, looking on with a sour expression, seemed to be brewing some malicious scheme. Arya, knowing the Emperor well, was certain he was up to no good. To ease the tension in the banquet hall, the Emperor offered a perfunctory welcome to the Duke of Baruntha, but laced his words with a backhanded compliment, calling him a hero of the shadows. Seeing the Emperor deliberately misleading the uninformed crowd, Arya felt a surge of anger. Though she longed to slap him, she maintained her composure and gracefully curtsied. As expected, the Emperor, captivated by her beauty, began to gossip about the rumors surrounding her marriage. He pointedly brought up the extravagant value of her gemstone earrings. Arya, with a subtle barb, praised his discerning eye. "After all," she implied, "in the eyes of a swine, there's no difference between a gemstone and a piece of gravel." It was a veiled insult, accusing him of being blind to Baruntha's true worth. "Couldn't you see Baruntha's sacrifices?" Her words hung in the air. At that moment, Lloyd stepped forward, echoing her sentiment. Surprisingly, the Emperor didn't react with anger. Instead, he apologized for his previous accusations. He even extended a personal invitation to dine with them before departing. Arya felt a growing unease. Shortly after, she received a message from Vincent. Before she could inquire further, she heard arguing from the other end. The two, Vincent and presumably Gabriel, bickered constantly, yet somehow maintained a strange harmony. After what felt like an eternity, Arya impatiently urged Vincent to get to the point. He finally revealed they had found the cipher key. Vincent excitedly declared they were almost finished. However, Arya's unintentional sigh prompted him to complain about how hard he was working. Arya listened to his whining, while simultaneously praising him. "There's no one else in the world as capable as you," she soothed. Vincent, momentarily stunned, began to stammer. "So, am I officially yours now?" he blurted out. This sweet, silly boy. Was he still working for that offhandedly promised 0.1% of her wealth? Arya smiled and wrote back sincerely, "You've always been mine." A wave of unexpected emotion washed over Vincent. Vincent's happy laughter, along with his promise to share good news soon, did little to ease Arya's growing anxiety. A knot tightened in her stomach, a premonition of something unpleasant. Lloyd approached, announcing the banquet's end. Arya, suppressing her unease, took his hand. Consumed by her desire to protect him, she didn't realize how tightly she was gripping his hand. Lloyd, sensing her distress, asked if something was wrong. Arya, lost in thought, simply countered, "Don't you like it?" But being back in the place where she had suffered so much in her past life, facing the Emperor's repulsive face, Arya felt trapped, as if she were back in that cage, forced to sing endlessly. Even until her vocal cords tore and blood filled her mouth, she had been forced to sing. Protect Lloyd. The thought echoed in her mind. Knowing the future, Arya decided to drop the pretense. She'd seen enough of the Emperor's malicious intent, and the numerous servants, moving like corpses, sent a chill down her spine. She took a tentative step forward. As she suspected, "This room is enchanted with amplifying magic," she told Lloyd. He looked at her, puzzled. Arya tilted her head, feigning innocence. "The people of Baruntha have weak wills," she mused aloud. Could he be trying to control them mentally? Lloyd, oblivious to the danger, simply found her adorable. Adorable? "Brother, please be serious," she thought, exasperated. "Can't you see the Emperor is trying to harm you?" To appease his oblivious wife, Lloyd stood outside the town, bidding the Emperor farewell. He even feigned a sensitive stomach, claiming he might vomit if he had to watch the Emperor eat, while Arya found his words satisfying. The sudden stench that filled the air made her nearly choke. Did someone say? She wondered, but there was no one there who resembled the person she was thinking of. The Emperor, his bluster thinly veiling his unease, invited them to dine. Lloyd, with a chilling smile, warned him, "Don't get caught with white paint on your hands." Arya, increasingly apprehensive, noticed a servant staring intently at them. The servant let out a chilling chuckle and began chanting a spell. But before the incantation was complete, a scabbard pierced the servant's throat. Yet it wasn't over. The servant, eyes still burning with hatred, lunged at them, moving with surprising speed despite the fatal wound. Lied Shildingaria ended the attack swiftly, but even bisected, the body continued to gurgle and roar, eyes wide with fun. The grotesque sight confirmed Arya's suspicions. She tugged at Lloyd's sleeve, urging him to leave, but the Emperor blocked their path. What is he thinking? Arya wondered frantically. Could he have brought Water Rat here? In her past life, the Emperor and Water Rat had no connection. Had her actions changed the course of events? The magic within the room pulsed with unnatural energy. Water Rat must still be lurking, manipulating the enchantment. Suddenly, Lloyd swung his sword, striking down one of the Emperor's attendants. "You demonic fiend," the attendant cursed. "Couldn't you at least give me a chance to finish the spell?" Seeing this new face of Water Rat, Arya finally understood the purpose of the servants. "You're insane," she accused the Emperor. He retorted, threatening the lives of everyone at the banquet if they dared to leave. "Fine then," Arya thought. "You can both die together." Lloyd covered her mouth, unwilling to let her reveal her powers in front of others. Besides, her song wouldn't work on unnatural chimeras like these. Even if they killed them, Water Rat could simply possess new bodies. But if they discovered her true nature as a siren? Sensing Arya's fear, Lloyd's playful demeanor vanished. Before the Emperor could finish his sentence, Lloyd's sword pierced the Emperor's carotid artery. Clutching his spurting neck, Water Rat, possessing the Emperor's body, frantically searched for a new host. Another sickening crack echoed through the hall. Moments later, a guard slowly rose, muttering, "Finally a strong body." He foolishly taunted Lloyd, who now stood like a vengeful god. The guard barely managed to parry a blow before being pummeled like a rag doll, utterly defenseless against Lloyd's fury. Before he could even gasp for breath, another thrust of Lloyd's sword sent him screaming in agony. Corpses don't feel pain. Could the guard still be alive? "Arya, would it be all right if I killed innocent people?" Lloyd's voice was a chilling whisper. "I wouldn't mind," Arya thought, but she glanced at Lloyd's head, shaking slightly. Sighing, Lloyd asked Water Rat what he wanted. Upon hearing the creature's desire for his malice, he quietly told Arya to ignore whatever happened next. He then discarded his sword. Spreading his arms wide, Lloyd invited Water Rat to try and take it. Worried the creature might hesitate, he even goaded it. This is power beyond human comprehension. It can grant you anything you desire. What are you waiting for? Don't you want it? The scene unfolding before her led Arya to believe Lloyd was sacrificing himself to save the innocent. Before she could stop him, she watched him step into a magic circle. A stream of arcane incantations filled the air, empowered by the amplifying magic Water Rat, while frantically extracting Lloyd's malice, hypocritically offered him forgiveness. He knew that without his malice, the esteemed Duke of Baruntha would only live a life of agonizing madness. But he, Water Rat, was different. He was immortal, incapable of producing offspring. This power, this malice was perfectly suited for him. Only then did Arya understand what was happening between them. But this meant Lloyd could die, go mad, or even cease to exist. The man everyone envied, the Duke, was obsessed with finding ways to kill himself to escape the curse of his malice. When someone offered to help, he readily surrendered. He even goaded Water Rat, allowing the creature to do as it pleased. Consumed by the immense power, Water Rat descended into madness, believing that by accepting Lloyd's malice, he would gain everything he desired. However, instead of granting him strength, the malice began to burn his very being. You knew this would happen. Lloyd's voice cut through the creature's euphoria. Didn't you, you wretched thing? Before Water Rat could curse him further, he was reduced to ashes. The Emperor, now free from Water Rat's control, stared in horror. Sensing Water Rat's demise, Arya rushed towards Lloyd, just as they were about to touch. Lloyd pulled away. Seeing Arya's confusion, he quickly apologized, fearing his exposed malice might harm her. He resisted the urge to comfort her, asking her to wait outside. He then turned, his sword pressed against the Emperor's throat. Listening to the Emperor's insincere apologies, Lloyd thought, since you were foolish enough to risk everything, it wouldn't be unreasonable for me to collect a little interest, would it? Meanwhile, the Saint, finally arriving, noticed the Baruntha carriage. Bellany inquired tentatively. To his surprise, the Water Rat, who had coveted Baruntha's malice, had been purified by divine power. What divine power? Could it be the devil's malice? He wondered. He knew asking wouldn't yield any answers. But chimeras require immense energy and blood. A greedy smile spread across his face as a thought occurred to him. As the carriage began its journey, Arya fidgeted, unable to sit still. Her eyes darted nervously towards Lloyd. He had seemed indifferent to Water Rat, until the creature spoke of taking his malice. Could that be the scar on his heart she'd sensed? Perhaps charmed by Arya's almost childlike attempts to soothe him, Lloyd didn't answer her unspoken question. Instead, he murmured, "Why is this place closer?" The villa before them was where he had spent his childhood, the place where his nightmare had begun. He had once believed he would live an ordinary life, but the generational curse had plunged him into despair. Then Arya had appeared, a warm ray of sunlight in his darkness. Even if she were a sweet poison, he would gladly embrace her. The moment he discovered a way to end the curse, he began to loathe celebrating his birthday. He lost interest in everything. To him, all emotions were shackles binding him to his inevitable destruction. Looking at his body, the vessel of all that malice, he knew if he died, nothing would belong to him anymore. Lloyd told himself not to be greedy. Leaving with his memories would be enough. "Arya, I'm sorry. Please forgive my selfishness." Suddenly, a surge of violent energy erupted around him, threatening to tear him apart. Runes of destruction spread rapidly. Almost there. If he could just withstand it, this nightmare would end. A deafening roar filled his ears. He plunged into darkness, losing consciousness. He didn't know how much time passed. Lloyd opened his eyes, taking in his surroundings. He was still alive. Had he failed? The malice within him remained, but the unnerving silence filled him with dread. Why couldn't he hear anything? The bedroom was empty. Even the kitchen was deserted. Traces of life lingered everywhere, yet everyone had vanished as if they had never existed. Unable to find Arya, Lloyd's panic escalated into terror. He stared at the only remaining closed door, fear gripping him. The moment he opened it, he saw her. Arya lay on the floor, covered in blood. He roared, "No!" But Arya's limp body offered no response. He could only plead with her, his voice breaking with each desperate word. Lost in his grief, Lloyd didn't realize that Arya had opened her eyes. The empty room reminded her of the person who had been by her side since her rebirth. Even if it was just a contract, he was still her family, wasn't he? Suddenly, she heard faint, choked sobs in the distance. Was the Emperor causing trouble again? Worried about Lloyd, Arya burst through the door. He seemed all right. Before she could sigh in relief, she realized she was wrong. Soothing him, Arya explained why she hadn't knocked, wiping away his tears with a pang of heartache. Then, Lloyd suddenly gripped her hand, declaring that he not only wanted to live, but to live with her. Unable to bear the thought of losing her again, he vowed to protect her. But would fate allow them this happiness? Would it return to its cruel trajectory, bringing them even more pain? Mistaking Lloyd's strange behavior for the after effects of a nightmare, Arya was taken aback when he blushed and asked her to forget what he'd just said. No way, we're practically one person. Are you really not going to tell me? In a dream, Lloyd had learned the way to end the curse. He had tried to destroy himself, but he had killed Arya instead. He didn't understand why he had lost control. Perhaps it was the malice refusing to be extinguished. You wanted to end your life? Arya sensed the turbulent emotions swirling within him. He quickly reassured her that he didn't want to die, unaware that Arya had already pieced together the events of the Baruntha incident. She had assumed it was an enemy attack, but it was Lloyd trying to sacrifice himself to save the world. He'd lost control of his malice, and his entire family had paid the price. If it happened again, all living things would die. Consumed by his pain, he had surrendered to his madness. Arya, I won't die. I won't leave you to grieve alone. Instead of facing oblivion alone, let's face it together. Lloyd whispered his beloved's name, fighting back his own sorrow. She told him it wasn't his fault. It couldn't be. But in her past life, he hadn't been there. And why hadn't his body disappeared? Was it all truly just a nightmare? Lloyd, let me sing you a lullaby. No, I'm not a child anymore. Even my father still listens to them. Okay, I'm lying down. Sing. But as she listened to the beautiful melody, Lloyd's eyes grew wider and wider. Are you even listening? Can't you close your eyes? You little rascal, trying to lull me to sleep. Where are you planning to go? I just want you to get a good night's sleep. I don't need to sleep, as long as you're by my side. Meanwhile, freed from his master, Hans cheered his newfound freedom while simultaneously bemoaning his assaulted olfactory senses. He never wanted to be a disgusting chimera again. He just wanted to be a regular, laid-back office worker. Oh really? An office worker? I see you have a unique skeletal structure. Want to save the world together? Come on, my master is waiting for you. Great, so it's back to pulling all-nighters, is it? He grumbled sleepily. Good news. Great news. I finally figured out the secret of the box. Vincent, however, attempted to convey this information by singing a bizarre, off-key rendition of Do-Re-Mi. Are you trying to kill me with that racket? An exasperated Arya snapped. Vincent, indignant, cleared his throat, and, with complete disregard for the well-being of anyone within earshot, began to wail. The melody veered wildly off course, like a train derailing. Stop! Unable to endure it any longer, Arya instructed him on proper breathing techniques. The result, however, was a room filled with the sound of fingernails scraping against the chalkboard. Is this some kind of torture? No, it's the Saint's Dawn song. At this, Arya cried out, but failed to catch his attention. Resigned, she asked him for the sheet music. This, however, startled Vincent into a fresh round of incoherent babbling. Ignoring him, Arya began to sing, following the melody on the page. Perhaps spurred by her singing, he asked her to wait a moment. Only a moment later, however, he was stunned by the sight before him. Where did these three come from? He wondered, particularly fixated on the large man, who was dangling his small arm like a rag doll. Stop it! The future, doting husband protectively scooped the child into his arms. He heard the one-handed man cry out and his daughter whimper pathetically. Arya's mind filled with images of her frail, elderly father being abused. Lloyd, how could you? She scolded. Faced with his tearful son, the Duke was secretly delighted, but continued to feign fragility, asking his daughter to comfort him. Looking at Arya, standing between them, the Duke said, "Darling, ignore these two fools. Let's go for a walk." The two behind them protested. "You haven't put our leashes on yet." Arya, curious about their arrival, heard someone humming incessantly. Karine covered her mouth, staggering back, overcome with speechless emotion. Hearing that their daughter was in danger, the Duke and Duchess had disregarded everything to teleport her to safety. "It's no wonder you're so determined to change the future." This comment, however, drew the Duchess's ire. She demanded to know what he meant. Glancing at his fuming wife, he stammered, "Of course, going against the natural order of things. Does that include me? Are you saying I shouldn't be alive?" No, my dear, you misunderstand." He then quickly sent a telepathic message to Arya. "While things may seem idyllic now, you'll pay a greater price later. The same ending awaits. Who dares threaten my wife's life?" Lloyd's voice was low and dangerous. Looking at the two who had appeared behind him, the Duke practically choked on his explanations. "Perhaps I should just disappear." He was, however, firmly gripped by the Duke, who insisted on accompanying him to the palace. "He's mad, completely mad. Don't tell me he plans to offer me as a sacrifice." Listening to their discussion, he heard them plotting to deal with the Emperor. If he's too much trouble, just kill him and turn him into a puppet. This, however, required Kareen's assistance. Worried about the court mage discovering their plans, they decided to eliminate him as well. "How dare they threaten my daughter?" "Darling," Arya interjected, "shall we discuss this elsewhere? What is the devil's malice?" He knew he shouldn't ask, but fine, keep your secrets. Though you needn't look so adorable while doing so. Are you trying to charm me to death? Understood, my love. Not a word. Was it a vow of silence? He recalled the water rat. If it was a similarly malevolent energy, it would be repulsive even without a binding oath. Then the opposite must be true, a holy power capable of purifying chimeras. So, who made them swear the oath? The Emperor? The Holy Empire? Or someone else? After countless questions and a wall of silence, he finally determined it was everyone. He hadn't heard anyone mention it in his past life, suggesting only those like the Emperor and the Pope knew. With their encouragement, he had become the villain, silently ostracized by all. No wonder the Emperor had been furious but unable to speak out. Doesn't that feel unfair? It was a mistake made by Baruntha's ancestors. But you've already paid enough, more than enough. This has nothing to do with you anymore. Lloyd, you're not at fault. Not in the slightest. Let's go see that damned Emperor right now. He finally understood. Darkness existed only where light was needed. Turning him into a puppet was far too lenient. How do you want to die, you ugly creature? Me? Or me? Son? Father? I think you should handle this. I'm afraid the sight of him might make me lose my dinner. The Emperor trembled, utterly terrified. He remembered his father's warning, never provoke Baruntha. Yet, he hadn't listened. He'd assumed they wouldn't dare retaliate. Now, cornered, he shamelessly called for help, and the help he summoned was a wanted sorcerer. Seeing them approach, the Emperor truly panicked, dropped to his knees, and begged for mercy. He pleaded to be spared, promising to declare Baruntha the hero who saved the Empire. Arya, intrigued by this offer, urged them to accept. The Duke, initially resistant, relented after a moment. He even admitted it was a good suggestion. Just then, Arya requested a private conversation with the Emperor. Lloyd, unsure of her intentions and worried she might be bullied, watched anxiously. Lloyd urged her not to shoulder burdens alone. Arya, however, pointed her ear, explaining that remaining in the same space as him would cause her pain. She stopped Lloyd from removing the mermaid's tear, urging him to trust her. Seeing the door close, the Emperor shed his facade of fragility. Finally, someone he could manipulate. He declared he wouldn't hold Baruntha's insolence against them. Looking at the young woman before him, inappropriate thoughts began to fester in his mind. However, Arya, with chilling composure, threatened to break his legs and lock him in an iron cage. She wasn't worried about the Emperor discovering her ability to speak. After all, he would soon be as good as dead. A sense of foreboding washed over the Emperor. He yelled for his guards to seize the madwoman, but Arya's expression turned sinister. In an instant, a torrent of raw power surged forth, accompanied by a haunting melody. She intended to force him to confront the very face of death, to forever dwell in the agony of betrayal and fear. The Emperor's anguished cries dragged him back to the harrowing memories of his past life. Consumed by hatred, Arya unleashed her fury upon him. She wanted him to suffer a fate worse than death. She wanted to see how far he would fall, clinging to meaningless hope. She began to weave a spell, twisting his mind. As long as he drew breath, he would be relentlessly pushed towards the abyss, only to grasp at futile hope in the moments before he plummeted. So live, she hissed. Live in that abyss, struggling endlessly, unable to escape. Arya's chillingly detached pronouncements reached Lloyd, who stood just outside the door. This wasn't the resentment of a day or two. He had also noticed the magic circle within the room. He was pondering the complex relationship between them when Arya, covered in blood, stumbled into his arms, seemingly drained of all strength. She assured him she just needed to rest. Unconvinced, Lloyd held her close and called for Kareen to heal her. The fugitive mage initially hesitated, but was met with a chilling glare that silenced any protest. He knew better than to argue with this particular force of nature. Back at the villa, Arya felt the weight of Vincent's intense stare. She asked why he wasn't speaking, and Vincent, like a lit fuse, exploded with a torrent of pent-up frustration. Arya tried to brush it off, but Vincent wasn't having it, taking his hands in hers. She offered a sincere apology. "I'm sorry," she said, "but thank you, truly." Her heartfelt words stunned Vincent into silence. He then, feigning nonchalance, brought up the pink pearl. He remembered his sister-in-law mentioning it was a map to Atlantis. "Didn't you also find a box in your dream? Can you tell me more about that?" That night, clutching the pink pearl, he had dreamt of Atlantis submerged beneath the waves. The moment he took the box, the city crumbled. When he finally awoke, the box was in his hands. Lost in thought, Vincent seemed to have reached a conclusion. He told Arya that the music score inside the box was meant for the siren who sought their homeland. It was invisible to others. Atlantis could only be accessed by the siren who could sing the Song of Dawn. So, it definitely wasn't because his singing was terrible. While he wasn't sure of the exact location, he was certain it was in the sea. They needed to prepare for a sea voyage. Looking at Vincent's smug expression, Arya stated that before they left, she wanted to find the man who sold the pearl. Vincent didn't understand why she wanted to find that lunatic, but he couldn't argue with her insistence. Elsewhere, the Emperor, jolted awake, learned from his attendant. Ever since the Baruntha delegation's visit to the palace, the Emperor had been in a deep slumber. Waking with amnesia, he assumed he'd simply had a nightmare. Upon hearing he'd been asleep for 2 days, he wondered if he'd been frightened into unconsciousness. He vaguely recalled the girl wanting a private conversation. He should be thanking her for leaving him physically unharmed. Then, a relentless voice echoed in his mind. "Oh, Emperor, give me back my life. Where is this coming from? And why wouldn't it stop? Who is it? Who's there?" he demanded. "Are you mocking me?" Ignoring his desperate pleas, the voice continued. "You will be abandoned by all." The tormented Emperor, feeling utterly ridiculed, lashed out with his sword, attempting to silence the maddening voice. Insects like them belonged at his feet. He was the Emperor, destined for eternal power and glory. Before that, however, he had to play along, proclaiming Baruntha the heroes of the Empire. He seethed with resentment. One day, he would destroy them all. Just then, the words "you will face ruin and death" struck him, paralyzing him in fear. The phrase then began to repeat, like a relentless curse, constantly assaulting his mind. Completely overwhelmed, the Emperor felt like a fish out of water, left to cling to meaningless hope, struggling in the depths of despair. "My handsome, wealthy husband is being coveted by my nemesis," someone exclaimed. Ignoring the surrounding murmurs, the Emperor declared Baruntha the heroes of the Empire, bestowing upon them medals and trophies. Lloyd, however, looked as if he'd swallowed a fly. "Shouldn't the Duke of Baruntha be accepting this?" he questioned. In response to his daughter's inquiry, the Duke quipped that the reward was far too generous. Meanwhile, Hans, surreptitiously filming the event, whispered to his sister-in-law, "Big Brother looked like he wanted to kill someone just now." In Arya's eyes, however, Lloyd was a perfect angel. Snatching the recording sphere from Hans, Lloyd crushed it in his hand. His irritated expression was misinterpreted by Arya as unhappiness. Looking at his seemingly distressed face, she felt a pang of sympathy. Although perhaps a bit delusional, he truly hoped Baruntha could shed its demonic stigma. Just then, he spotted Bellany in the distance, the mastermind behind his misfortune. She approached him warmly, thanking his wife for taking such good care of her knight. Sensing her blatant insincerity, Lloyd found her unexpected wariness towards him rather curious. "You're referring to Gabriel, I presume? I should be thanking you for sending such an exceptional individual." She emphasized the words "exceptional individual." Bellany feigned indifference, then turned to Arya with the enthusiasm of a long-lost friend. Despite her icy demeanor, her words dripped with veiled barbs, nearly overloading Lloyd's mental circuits as he tried to decipher her true intentions. After an hour of this thinly veiled verbal sparring, Bellany finally mentioned Gabriel again. Lloyd detected a possessive undertone in her voice. Had the Grand Duke lost his appeal, or was there another way to secure victory? Seemingly aware of his confusion, Bellany declared she had no intention of resorting to underhanded tactics to gain power, effectively silencing Arya before she could voice her question. Noticing his wife's unusual quietness, Lloyd asked what was wrong. Arya, snapping back to reality, claimed she was simply startled. The High Priest, clearly displeased with Bellany's behavior, called Lloyd over for a chat, likely to protest the accolades given to Baruntha. Bellany offered an elegant farewell, not forgetting to lavish Arya with insincere praise. Instead of endearing herself to Lloyd, she only reinforced his belief that she was completely unhinged. Bellany, clenching her fists at his words, fixed him with a venomous glare. It doesn't matter, she thought. You will be mine eventually. A devoted family man abandoned his wife and child, running off with all their money in the middle of the night, Arya recounted, her voice laced with disbelief. But he promised he'd pay off their debts. Something must have happened, she speculated. Beside her, Hans, not known for his sharp intellect, anxiously counted on his fingers, trying to make sense of it. Thankfully, Vincent didn't seem to mind Hans's struggle. Used to being told his head was purely decorative, Hans had developed the mistaken impression he was quite the dashing figure. To his surprise, he actually received a nod of agreement from Vincent. However, Arya swiftly put a stop to his preening with a sharp kick and a scolding, "Don't get ahead of yourself." She then turned to Vincent, inquiring about any news regarding Atlantis. Vincent launched into a lengthy explanation, but none of it seemed to be what Arya wanted to hear. Overhearing the mention of Viscount O'Neill, Hans's face paled. A sudden realization struck him. He'd been tricked. Arya, he blurted out, Pade's family was sold to slavers a week ago, but they weren't auctioned off. They were sent to the distant Pluto territory, he finished, his voice filled with urgency. Arya frowned, puzzled by the slavers' unusual actions. That's strange. What's their motive? Something's definitely not right, she murmured. Vincent, his eyes narrowing, voiced his suspicions. I think Viscount O'Neill is involved. He probably killed Pade and took his money, he suggested grimly. No, 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 Hans interjected, shaking his head. The Viscount enjoys toying with people. He's probably still alive. After confirming the location of the Viscount's territory, Arya turned to go, intending to ask Karine for a map. However, both Lloyd and Vincent stopped her, much to her surprise. And then, they did that to her. Facing his indignant wife, Lloyd insisted, "You have to promise me you'll take care of yourself." Arya glared at him. "Shouldn't you be the one saying that? My brother has 8-pack abs." Hans chimed in, flexing his own less impressive muscles. "He's not fragile like you, like a piece of glass." Arya and Vincent exchanged glances. Father and mother definitely wouldn't approve of this, Arya muttered. I should have just snuck out. Determined to spend the rest of her life with Lloyd, Arya knew she had to investigate the Baruntha curse and find the other three, all while trying to heal Lloyd's failing health. I'm not sure, she mused, but magic and Celine's singing both have healing properties. Maybe they can interact. To convince Lloyd, Arya declared, I'm coming with you. Lloyd readily agreed, much to Vincent's alarm. Little brother, this is something your guards could handle, Vincent protested. Why do you have to go yourself? And with only this simpleton? He gestured towards Hans. If you're going, then take me too, Arya. I can keep you from getting led astray by someone, he added, pointedly looking at Lloyd. He was taken aback when Lloyd actually called him a burden. A burden? Hans, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. Vincent sputtered, indignant. A burden? He thinks I'm a burden. You'll never get a girlfriend like this, you know, he huffed. Fine. Arya, what's the plan? Arya shrugged. No plan. Is my combat prowess nothing to you? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Seeing his wife's stubborn silence, Lloyd sighed. Fine, we'll do it your way. To catch up with the slavers, they needed to borrow something from Karine. And so, the four of them teleported directly to Viscount O'Neill's territory, landing on a remote hill far from the city. Lloyd scooped Arya into his arms. Come on, you too. Keep up, he called back to Vincent and Hans. A short while later, looking at the exhausted Vincent sprawled on the ground, Hans snapped, Get up, slowpoke. Quickly reaching the city manor, the four of them swiftly incapacitated the guards before they could raise the alarm. Lloyd, determined to find the Viscount, grabbed a passing servant. Just then, Arya heard a cry for help. She pointed towards a nearby building. Lloyd, after quickly knocking out the servant, followed Arya's directions. They continued until they heard another cry of anguish from below. The man imprisoned inside was startled at first, then cried out in excitement, "Your Majesty!" Worried the commotion would attract the guards, Arya quickly shushed him. "Lloyd, darling," Arya said sweetly, "could you please remove this window? I need to get in there." Arya repeatedly assured Lloyd she wouldn't get hurt. Knowing he couldn't win against his wife's determination, he took out his frustration on the window frame, ripping it out with a powerful tug. Arya, with a graceful leap, dropped down into the darkness. She landed softly, finding Pade muttering to himself. Suddenly, a clang echoed through the room, and then silence. Only when she felt a soft yielding beneath her feet did Pade seem to notice her. He moved aside, and Arya explained she was there to rescue him. "Now listen," she instructed. "I need you to yell and scream as loud as you can to attract the guards." Having given her instructions, Arya added gravely, "Your family is in danger." Pade gasped, the news hitting him like a blow. Then, taking a deep breath, he shrieked in a surprisingly high-pitched voice, "Hey you, come over here." The annoyed guard finally noticed Arya. Before he could speak, however, he heard a soft, melodic whisper, seemingly just between them. As if bewitched, the guard felt a sudden, overwhelming desire to please Arya, to do anything she asked. Following the subtle guidance of her song, he fumbled for his keys. Arya emerged, Pade in tow, only to find Lloyd, Vincent, and Hans staring at her with strange expressions. Overwhelmed with worry for his family, Pade interrupted whatever they were about to say. He pleaded with Arya to save his family. Vincent reassured him, "Don't worry. They don't harm the slaves until the ship reaches port," he explained. "Besides," he added with a sly grin, "our next target is, well, take a guess." Lloyd, resting his head on Arya's lap as she hummed a tune, couldn't have been happier. Meanwhile, upstairs, Hans the mage paced back and forth, muttering angrily. "This is just human experimentation," he grumbled. "It's worse than the water rats." A voice called out to him, startling him so badly he nearly wet himself. Recovering quickly, he lied, claiming he was just admiring the moon. The other man, holding Hans's leash, wasn't worried about betrayal. Instead, he inquired about Hans's research from 4 years prior. Hearing that Hans could create complete chimeras, the man was pleased, imagining his master's delight. "Can it possess specific energies?" he asked. "Yes," Hans replied, "but there's a risk of them becoming vegetative." "That doesn't matter," the man dismissed. "Master just wants a living doll that can breathe." Meanwhile, on a ship sailing across the open sea, Lloyd watched Arya's joyful expression as she gazed at the ocean. "Do you like it?" he asked tenderly. He had agreed to the rendezvous at sea solely to fulfill Arya's wish to see the ocean. He adored her and remembered every word she said. "I do," Arya replied, turning to him with a smile. "But what I like even more is being here with you." Hearing Lloyd gulp, she asked, "Are you thirsty?" Lloyd accepted the water she offered and drank it down in large gulps. He couldn't understand why his throat was so dry. Suddenly, a strange sound reached their ears. It was Vincent, who had been singing nonstop and had now gone hoarse. Arya, hearing that Candy could help, tried to force him on him, but he resisted. "Go lie down for a bit," Arya suggested. Vincent, however, was still being picky. "Why don't you let me rest my head on your lap?" he offered. Lloyd, overhearing this, immediately claimed he felt unwell too. Alarmed, Arya rushed to his side, prompting Vincent to wail dramatically. He even started to fake cry, vying for Arya's attention. Lloyd, reclaiming his wife's focus, whined and insisted that he needed to rest his head on her lap to feel better. Just then, the ship's captain appeared, holding 2 bottles of mustard. "Drink this, you'll be fine," he advised, glaring at the 2 bothersome men. Lloyd nearly unsheathed his metaphorical 800-meter-long blade. The captain, attempting to salvage the situation, accidentally dropped one of the bottles. And when Lloyd feigned a pained expression, the captain quickly added, "Oh dear, there's only one left now." He offered it to Lloyd with an apologetic look. Seeing this, Vincent couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for Lloyd. Back in the cabin, the 2 men, Lloyd, feeling unwell, thought Vincent might sing for him, but Lloyd, citing poor sound insulation, refused the offer. Well then, Vincent suggested, why don't you lie here, Lloyd? Lloyd, worried about crushing Arya, initially hesitated, but his body, more honest than his mind, betrayed him, and he laid down beside her. As their eyes met, their hearts began to race. Listening to Arya's soft humming, Lloyd found himself drifting off, lost in a rare moment of peaceful contemplation. Am I heavy? He murmured. Not at all, Arya replied playfully. You're light as a feather. Her playful response brought a childlike smile to Lloyd's face. Is this happiness? He wondered. If so, even death would be worth it. He didn't realize these words would become a tragic foreshadowing. Hey everyone, a voice interrupted the scene, breaking the spell. For those who want to see what happens next in the Demon's Covenant manga, you can go here, the voice continued, presumably from a narrator. That's right here. Then click on the magnifying glass. Type in Demon's Covenant. Make sure you don't misspell it. Then click on the one that pops up. That's it. Thank you for supporting the author. Love you all. The intrusive advertisement finally ended. Do you want to be a little bird laughed at by a pig? Arya asked, her tone suggesting a plan. Hearing Arya's plan to intercept the slave ship, Vincent immediately protested. Even if you're a scion, you can't withstand cannon fire, he exclaimed. That sharp tongue of his, Arya thought. Irritated, he probably floats even if he falls into the ocean. Seeing that he couldn't reason with Arya, Vincent turned to Lloyd. Aren't you going to do anything about her recklessness? Lloyd, ever the devoted husband, simply replied, I'll do whatever Arya says. With the two geniuses refusing to think strategically, Vincent was left with the unenviable task of explaining the slaver's likely hiding place to the muscle-brained simpleton, Hans. They'll have to pass through the Dyke Sea, Vincent explained, and there's only one navigable route. Having pinpointed the slaver's destination, Pade suggested sneaking in alone, but Arya refused. Do you intend to use your song, my lady? Lloyd asked, a hint of worry in his voice. No, Lloyd stated firmly, his tone causing Arya to hesitate. She saw fear in his eyes. They both knew the cost of using her power over such a large area could be fatal. Unwilling to risk Arya's life, Lloyd decided to take Vincent with him. I want to go too, Hans chimed in. Lloyd, with a single glance, dismissed him, seemingly sensing Arya's worry. Vincent reassured her, don't overthink it. I've seen Lloyd kick people into walls so hard they couldn't be pulled out, he added. This, however, only increased Arya's anxiety. Meanwhile, the scarred leader of the slave traders, a cruel and cautious man, to prevent escapes and ensure a smooth landing, ordered his men to use experimental subjects as handlers for the slaves. This discovery would nearly push Lloyd over the edge, threatening to unleash devastating consequences. The four companions, lying in wait, observed the haphazardly moored ships, the large slave ship and the cargo vessel behind it. As for the smaller boats, they remained a mystery. The lax security suggested the slavers weren't worried about escapes. Perhaps they felt secure, being so close to their home port. But time was running out. Even if it was a trap, they had to act now. Watching Lloyd prepare to leave, Arya felt a growing unease. Lloyd, please come back safely, she pleaded, her voice filled with love and worry. He reassured her tenderly, promising a swift return. Wait for me, he said. My love, Lloyd thought later, you promised to wait. Why are you lying here alone, refusing to wake? Infiltrating the slave ship, Lloyd and Vincent found the surroundings eerily quiet. Just as Lloyd began to suspect a trap, they heard agonizing cries coming from below deck. Lloyd rushed towards the sound. Finding the door locked, Lloyd didn't hesitate. With a single kick, he splintered the wood and burst into the room. The two men recoiled, gagging at the overpowering stench of blood. A mutilated slave lay sprawled on the floor, limbs grotesquely twisted. Pade, frantic with worry for his family, tried to rush further into the hold, but Lloyd held him back. He heard a faint whimper, a desperate plea for help. Who did this? Lloyd demanded, his voice dangerously low. The barely audible response sent a chill down his spine. Stay here, Lloyd commanded Pade, his eyes hardening with resolve. I'll bring your family back. He gently draped his cloak over a trembling child huddled in the corner. Then, drawing his sword, Lloyd advanced on the monstrous figure hunched over its gruesome meal. The creature, unfazed by the gleaming blade, looked up with a mocking grin. These are my snacks, it hissed, gesturing to the carnage. and you'll be next. Lloyd lunged, their blades clashing in a brief, brutal exchange. Even after being cleaved nearly in two, the monstrous being lurched towards Lloyd, its movements unsettlingly fluid. "You're a bad man," it babbled, its words slurred and nonsensical. This water-like chimera seemed strangely unintelligent. Recognizing the nature of the creature, Lloyd's attacks became more focused, more precise. He sliced through the regenerating flesh with grim efficiency. "This is incredibly annoying," he thought. Could this be the work of that mage? Distracted by Arya's worried voice from above, Lloyd felt a searing pain as the creature raked its claws across his cheek. The wound, though superficial, ignited a cold fury within him. He glared at the resilient monstrosity with undisguised loathing. His disgust intensified when the creature revealed there were more like it. Lloyd's eyes swept the room, counting the grotesque figures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 in total. He remembered Arya's parting words, her plea for his safety. "I'll be back soon," he murmured, his cold demeanor melting into a tender smile. Even as the creatures swarmed him, he spoke softly, his thoughts fixed on his wife. "Wait for me." With terrifying speed and precision, he cut them down, one after another. Lloyd urged the surviving slaves onto the deck. "Get to the other ship," he commanded. Now, once everyone had evacuated, the dismembered creatures began to reform, their bodies knitting back together. One of the monsters, its eyes gleaming with cruel hunger, noticed a mother and child still hiding in the shadows. Just as it lunged, Pade threw himself in front of his family, shielding them with his body. A sickening thud echoed through the hold, but miraculously, Pade survived. Lloyd had returned, his blade a blur of motion. But Lloyd was different now. His eyes were cold, his movements imbued with a chilling malice. Unaware of the danger he was in, the scarred leader of the slavers casually berated his men, dismissing the loss of a few slaves as insignificant. With the experimental subjects, he sneered, a few casualties are acceptable. Meanwhile, Arya paced anxiously on the other ship, her gaze fixed on the slave ship. She saw figures emerging onto the deck, but there was no sign of Lloyd, no sound of his voice. The silence was deafening, her unease growing with each passing moment. Then she saw Pade and his family, their faces etched with terror, trying to convey something across the widening gap between the ships. Suddenly, a beautiful melody filled the air, ignoring Vincent's desperate pleas. Arya began to sing the Song of Dawn. A surge of raw power erupted around her, knocking Vincent off his feet. As her magic spread, the sea seemed to respond, carrying her voice towards her beloved. The song, filled with a soothing power, banished the darkness and instilled courage in the hearts of the rescued slaves. Emboldened, they began to prepare the ship for their escape. But Arya, having poured all her strength into the song, collapsed, her body racked with exhaustion. Agony ripped through Arya, a searing pain that felt like every bone in her body was being shattered. Even in that moment, as darkness threatened to consume her, Lloyd's name was on her lips. Meanwhile, Lloyd, consumed by a growing rage, stood guard at the entrance to the hold. 9 left, he muttered, a chilling detachment in his voice. He sensed their fear, the terror radiating from the cowering figures. A cruel smile twisted his lips. "What are you afraid of?" he taunted. "Isn't this the salvation you craved in life?" The only sound in the blood-soaked room was the steady drip, drip, drip of crimson droplets falling from the ceiling. But to Lloyd, the silence was deafening, a cacophony of whispers echoing in his mind. The demonic voice urged him on, whispering promises of release if he would only slaughter these vile, selfish humans. Consumed by the insidious whispers, Lloyd stalked towards the source of the incessant dripping, his eyes burning with a malevolent light. Just kill them, he thought, and the pain will stop. Just as he raised his sword, a familiar melody pierced the darkness, reaching him as if on the wings of an angel. The song washed over him, a soothing balm that chased away the shadows and silenced the demonic whispers. Slowly, recognition dawned. He knew that voice. He saw faces flashing before his eyes, worried faces, smiling faces, faces filled with love and joy and sorrow. Memories flooded back, a torrent of emotions washing over him. He remembered Arya, her laughter, her touch, her unwavering belief in him. With a sudden jolt, he understood. He shoved his way through the terrified crowd, desperate to reach her. This section appears to be a message to the audience and breaks the fourth wall. It translates to, "Thank you for liking Ollie. If possible, please search for Devil's Contract and support the author." Another fourth wall break, likely a personal message. "Honey, I've been waiting for you to ask me. I've also been waiting for you to tell me. Silly darling. I thought the young mistress was frail," Vincent muttered, watching in awe as Arya's song empowered the rescued slaves. "But she saved everyone single-handedly." He felt a pang of self-doubt. "I'm just dead weight," he thought glumly. "My brain's a decoration, and so am I." Suddenly, he saw a figure drawing a bow, aiming an arrow directly at him. With lightning reflexes, Vincent snatched the arrow out of the air and flung it back at the attacker. The man, startled and trembling, blurted out a confession about monsters and materials and some sort of dirty dealings. Just as Lloyd burst through the door, the crew attacked him, treating him like some kind of experimental subject. The pirate captain, realizing he was outmatched, roared for his men to help. "What are you waiting for?" he bellowed. Several men charged forward, brandishing AK-47s, but Lloyd dispatched them with terrifying ease. He casually impaled one on a nearby railing, then turned to the captain, demanding information about the experimental subjects. The captain, feigning ignorance, looked around nervously. His gaze landed on a bound figure huddled in the corner. The man's handsome profile reminded Lloyd of someone. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Is he one of your associates?" "I can't believe he'd have such an ugly companion," the captain scoffed. "But why is he tied up?" "I didn't want the boss to find him wandering around," the captain lied smoothly. To his surprise, Lloyd seemed to believe him. Emboldened, the captain continued to spin his web of lies, trying to get rid of Lloyd. "Since the slaves and materials have been moved to the bigger ship," he said, "there's no reason for you to stay here." He turned and walked away. Lloyd watched him go, a look of disbelief on his face. The captain nudged his unconscious companion. Suddenly, Lloyd whirled around, his eyes blazing with fury. "I'm very smart," he roared. "And I know that liars' eyes dart around when they're telling a falsehood." The commotion on deck finally attracted the attention of the scarred leader. Meanwhile, Lloyd, carrying the bound figure, asked where the young master was. Unbeknownst to him, Lloyd was frantically running back towards the other ship, his heart pounding with dread. He saw Arya lying unconscious on the deck. Guilt gnawed at him. He had forbidden her from coming, fearing for her safety, but she had come anyway, driven by her love for him. He gathered her into his arms, his mind reeling with self-recrimination. The demonic whispers returned, their insidious voices urging him to destroy everything, everyone around him. If that dream were real, Lloyd thought, his voice a choked whisper, Arya would have thrown herself between us, frail as she is. Even if the three of us were at our strongest, he continued, his mind racing, against the malice of a god, we would be enemies of all living things. If it came to that, he wondered, despair creeping into his heart. Could I even go on? Arya, please wake up. I can't lose you, he pleaded, his voice thick with emotion. His unconsciousness was filled with longing and anguish. He drifted in a haze of pain and worry, unsure how much time had passed. Finally, he awoke. The familiar decor of his room swam into focus. When had he returned? How long had he been asleep? Is that Lloyd? He murmured, his voice still thick with sleep. The scene felt strangely familiar, a disquieting echo of something he couldn't quite place. The recognition jolted him fully awake. He sat up, his heart pounding. "Lloyd!" he exclaimed, relief flooding through him. But then he noticed something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "Your eyes," he stammered, his voice laced with fear. "Why didn't you tell me they changed color? They're lighter, faded, they're gray. I just slept. What happened?" The change was undeniable, a chilling sign of some malevolent taint. Even if it was futile, he knew he had to find Carlene. Maybe she could restore them. Their sudden commotion roused Luna, who had been sleeping peacefully beside them. He pulled her close, holding her tight, murmuring reassurances and apologies. He grumbled about the quack behind him, still clearly unimpressed with the physician's skills. Arya learned from the golden-haired man that she had been unconscious for 3 whole days. More importantly, he added, his voice low, the Duke and Duchess know. I'll let your brother explain the rest. It seems you two caused quite a stir. Not only had they snuck out, but they had returned injured. Vincent urged the reluctant maid to leave, but their protracted farewells were making someone increasingly impatient. Vincent finally dragged him away, his face flushed with frustration. What about the slaves who were rescued? Arya asked, her voice filled with concern. They're being housed in Belunta, Vincent replied. But your brother was on that ship too. The one who was absent when we visited the Angelo family, Arya recalled. They have pirates guarding him. They're worried about his identity being revealed, Vincent explained. If anything goes wrong, they'll blame the pirates. We'll deal with that later, Arya said, her brow furrowed with worry. Tell me about your eyes. There were chimeras on that ship. They weren't intelligent, Vincent admitted, but they were stronger than the water rats. My wife mentioned Hans, the mage who betrayed the water rats 4 years ago. Arya asked. I was the one who orchestrated that. So, my illness back then was because of him? Vincent asked, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He could create chimeras even then. His techniques must be even more refined now, 5 years later, Arya mused. Your deductions are quite specific. Let's have some soda to calm our nerves, Arya said, holding out a drink. Come on, open wide. Her playful demeanor reminded him of 4 years ago. Back then, he had thought he was dreaming. Did you take care of me like this back then too? He asked, his voice soft. Tell me. I want to know. Please. Did you look after me? Did you feed me and give me water? Hearing the answer she longed for, Arya, barely containing her joy, asked why he had kept it a secret. I would have loved to know, she confessed. Now that we've cleared that up, she continued, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Can I ask the question I've been dying to ask? She felt a tingle as his fingers brushed against hers. It seemed he couldn't keep it hidden any longer. Do you know what the secret is, baby? He asked, his voice low and teasing. This section breaks the fourth wall and appears to be a message to the audience. The author of this comic loves it. It's truly wonderful. Thank you all for loving Arya. This season of the comic has concluded. You'll have to read the remaining 20+ chapters on your own. If you don't know where to read it, you can check out the continuation of Devil's Contract. If you have other favorite comics, you can also let Arya know.